All right, gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation. All right, has everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes from July 15th? If so, can I get a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any questions relating to military operations? Hearing none. All right, let's jump on to new business. We'll do this the same way as we've always been doing it. We'll start with staff report and introduction. And then we'll jump on to the applicant's presentation. And then we will get public comments. Please keep it to around 2 minutes and try not to repeat previous public comments. And then we'll jump on to board discussion and board decision. So new business. First thing on the item is annexation, which was tabled. Take it away, Kurt.
Before we start, Kurt, is there a sheet up there for people to write their names and address down?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I do.
Yay. Thank you.
Tony, would you be able to put on the,
Oh, no, for me, I was gonna start and then I'll let him share his presentation. No, I was gonna put the little PowerPoint on here, if that's possible. No, I have it on it's on this computer. Sorry. Then we'll switch over to Mr. Patterson. Yes. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. Okay, so there we go. It's back up. So if you remember, this was tabled at the last meeting. I'm kind of handling this now that Ryan moved on to an opportunity in Florida. This was tabled, I think, for consideration at this meeting to really think about the impacts on the residential adjoining neighbors and also the impacts on traffic on Horton Drive at that meeting. And so in fact, the notes of the meeting or the things that were discussed at the meeting were put in your staff report. So you just have some clarity on what was discussed with that. If I can find it. Sorry about that. So that's screwed up. Okay, so at your last meeting, there was consideration of Horton Drive and its suitability for industrial traffic. So I think, and there was also with that discussion of having members of the Planning Commission tour the streets individually if they had the opportunity to. Also, just to kind of get an idea. So I don't know if everyone did that. But staff did go out there. So right now, you know, the Horton Drive does narrow considerably, like right after this property, and it's really don't think could be defined as a it's probably not a road appropriate for you know, industrial traffic at its present moment and its present condition. With that, also consideration of the county process for approval, what powers or meetings would be required should the project be developed in the county. So I did call up the county planning director and we talked about this request because it's currently in the county. The county zoning right now that you see on the screen is C5R CMU, which is they have some acronyms, don't they? But it's a mixed use district that is kind of similar to our T4 district, but it allows industrial as well. Because of that, it's essentially a conditional use in their industrial district, which means it does not require a hearing. It just has to follow specific conditions. Now, the county planning and zoning director stated that looking at the project and basically what was discussed and submitted, they would have the applicant do a full TIA on the site. And if they were going to propose full access, trucks, et cetera, into this lot, in the sense that if this was in the county, it might not be able to be accessed through the city's industrial park to the north, that any improvements to that Horton Drive would be the responsibility of the applicant. So again, I think you kind of talked about this last time, so I don't know if I want to go over everything, but we can. But right now it is zoned the C5 RMU district. Industrial is a permitted use in the county. What the county would require to develop this project, and it would be done administratively, is a TIA. And the developer would be responsible for any improvements to basically bring that road up to a standard where industrial trucks could access that, basically that site plan. So that's where it stands now. What they're requesting is light industrial in the city. It's not really a conditional use, so that would be a straight zoning into the city. That is a staff level approval in the city. Basically most of the conditions, except for the setback really from industrial which is up on the screen, would be met. The applicant is proposing, go to the screen here with this. The applicant is proposing to have the main access to this property to the north, property that the applicant also owns, which would be part of the industrial park. So, however, the applicant would like to be able to access both sites. So really, I mean, the difference between the county and city zoning, there's not a difference in meetings. The big difference is the city, if it's annexed in the city, it would not trigger a TIA, so a traffic impact study. That's the biggest difference. So we would try to, and what's recommended here is that if you were to consider the annexation and recommended and rezoning with to the city council, that you recommend that basically that drive on Horton Drive be emergency only, recommend to staff. The reason for that is because in South Carolina, you can't really condition an annexation or a rezoning. You can do an annexation agreement, but I think that's something the applicant has to agree to. But you can't condition a rezoning application based on a site plan or something of that nature, perhaps as they do in other states. So if you are going to approve this, again, you can recommend that when this site plan is being approved, that we try to make it emergency access only, but you can't condition it. So hopefully I've explained it. So you can see it up on the screen. Essentially Horton Drive dead ends, not too far from this site. It really narrows, not too far from the site. There's, a lot of vegetation and trees that are, pretty close to the road. It's a very narrow road. Really not built to, I think, to a current standard, if you will. That's kind of an older road that, this is where it's located. So hopefully that makes some sense. And so I think with our recommendation tonight is, and again, from the previous meeting, the applicant is proposing basically to make this part of the industrial park that's in the city. So those are the two big things. that I think to take away from this meeting is, the reason that they're annexing is to bring it into the city, to have the whole industrial park as part of the city. That's obviously easier for permitting and legal reasons, et cetera. And also if he's going to provide a access easement into the, basically where the cul-de-sac is there on your screen, it just makes it easier for processing. So that's why it's being presented here to you today. Again, it can be done in the county. It might take a little longer and he might be responsible for access, and that would be his only access in the county, right? So he would have to probably upgrade it. So that's a consideration for you to think about. If it's through the city, he could access that road. And you could recommend emergency access vehicles only, or, improvements, but you can't condition it. So that hopefully I've explained this, okay, and everybody understands it, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant, but he's gonna have to screen share his presentation, just because it came kind of late and.
Kurt, but before we turn it over to the applicant, couple questions.
Sure.
What is the city's recommendation?
The city's recommendation is on that, last page of your staff report.
I don't have a staff report.
Oh, okay. I could probably pull it up on it'll probably take too long. I'll just read it. Staff recommends forwarding a recommendation of approval for annexation to the city council and approval of the rezoning, which is again, a separate motion. And so it's almost a separate hearing, but you're holding them together, to light industrial. The city council with a recommendation that access is limited from Horton Drive to emergency vehicles only.
So if I understand your statement correctly, we are not allowed to condition anything about the access regarding if we were to approve the annexation, we can only recommend, we cannot require that non-industrial park access be emergency only.
That's correct, unless the applicant is willing to do an annexation agreement with the city on that. And, thus far, I don't know that he is, but he's going to be speaking next, so you can ask him.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think good planning or, with the way it's laid out and been presented, and what he's proposed is, and with the way the road is now, since we can't do a TIA and require those improvements, we would require him to come off of the industrial park drive. So for his primary access, so.
But if in the future the use were to change,
Yeah,
that
that's,
access would be.
it could
free-
be valid.
Yeah.
Could be valid. And again, with our code, we cannot require that and you cannot condition it.
So is there going to be an access off of Industrial Village Road to this site?
That's what's been proposed. I think, that's what the applicant attested to at the last meeting and has basically informed staff of previously.
And that can only be done if the city annexes this.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to have legal access from the county and it would trigger the road. Yeah, so it's kind of a catch-22, I think, for the applicant here. So, if it gets developed in the county, so.
If the project stays with the county, then the county would require them to improve the road. Is that correct?
They would require them to do a traffic improvement, basically analysis, which may or may not, but would likely, I think, require them to improve the road.
And the client would be responsible for improving the road.
That's correct.
But if we if we provided the annex to the city cannot put that condition on to the I'm calling him the client.
You can only do the recommendation, and I think,
Now,
Yes.
but if we recommend that, can the city council then make them do that? I mean, we recommend that to the city council?
Yeah,
no,
here's what I would, let me ask you this, might answer the question. And I don't have my code with me, but I have to ask you. Maybe you said it to us. Assuming it goes through and it gets annexed and it's rezoned, does this zoning district that they're asking for, does this zoning district require that they, before they develop it, that they bring forth a plan for us to approve as part of the?
It does not. There's no, you would not be seeing anything. It would never come back to you.
So it would only be at a state level if you somehow found within the code that you had the discretionary authority to require that.
I look pretty stringently in the code and I do not have the power to trigger a TIA if it's on, unless it's under a certain.
Right, and so if we recommend council that they later consider what you suggest, nobody has the authority to require anything anyway, you said. They don't come forward with a plan review.
Yeah, it's purely administrative approval and either the county or the city. It's just the county does have sections in the
Right, I
code
get
where
that.
they could
Just talking
trigger.
about the City of Beaufort, so there's really, if we made the recommendation, it's meaningless anyway. Yes or no?
I think it lends some weight, should,
Lends some weight to.
yeah, it lends some weight. I think it empowers, the code administrator to, strongly, when the site plan's being reviewed, to strongly,
But I thought you just said you couldn't require that under the code.
can't, but I think recommending it, you give the code administrator some, a little more power to.
Here's another question though that I had. When I drove out there, I couldn't tell that there was really any access from this lot, or that there could be any access from this lot to Industrial Village Road, because it looked like all those lots, on this piece of paper, they're numbered 108, 112, 116. It looked like they were all developed. Oh,
I've seen a plat where he had a driveway going through the, it's hard to see on the screen. In fact, I can't read it from here. So, but I'm sure he could attest to which property
I
that he'd be
couldn't- it looked like
discussed.
They were all built on, which,
What, wasn't there supposed to be, I thought I heard something about a driveway coming off the cul-de-sac there?
Yeah, so the driveway would be coming off the cul-de-sac, and I can't read which number that is on the screen.
118.
Maybe it's in your staff report, but he'll be next, so I would, yeah, I think it's one, is that 115? I can't read it. It's either 5 or 8, so,
I just wanted to make sure that if we're anticipating that we could get some access that way, that there wasn't a complete barrier to it just by virtue of the way.
I mean, personally, I,
118 right now?
that's what I understand,
Yeah.
but again, I would ask, he's next, right? And so I would ask him. I mean, is the code administrator approving this? I would not approve this because of the nature of the road and the residences on the road. I don't think it's appropriate for industrial traffic, and I would try to do all I could to not approve that, but there's only so much power we have, but it's appropriate to go off an established industrial park, road, I think. And so, but, having 2 ways in and out, for emergency vehicles, or maybe eventually for this property to be served by that road, if it's improved, is something to consider. The challenge being is that the county's already given them a zoning that allows industrial. This is all voluntary for the city. The city doesn't have to agree to this. So, if you don't think it's a good idea and you'd rather him just to go through the county process because you're concerned about the land use pattern here, I think that's within your purview. You're not taking away his right here, and it's voluntary. It's just no legal action that can be taken if you decline, right?
So we can say no.
You can definitely say no without, and I think there's lots of reasons that you could say no, which is basically the compatibility of the adjacent zoning and the infrastructure is, not compatible with an industrial use. So I think if you just are saying yes, as you're saying that the infrastructure and of the industrial park, which may be used, and the fact that it's already allowed in the county,
Well, I've got a couple of comments I'd like to make before we hear from the applicant, if I may, please. So I spent a good bit of time out on this site, and this is not an unimproved road. This is a substantial road that already carries heavy traffic. There's, last time I was out there, I saw an Oliver's bush hogging truck accessing the gate which is the subject of the photo that I left in front of you, number 3, the last photo. So if you look at that photo, you can see that large trailers go in and out of that site as it is. The road is 20 feet in width. It is not a substandard road. It's been recently overlaid. It's got relatively new asphalt. There are no potholes. If you look at photo number 1, right there in the bottom right corner, that's where the applicant would propose accessing onto Horton Drive. And Kurt, let me ask you, is Horton Drive a state road or a county road?
I understood it to be a county road.
You believe it is or?
I believe it is, but.
Okay, I'm sure the applicant can answer that. I want to make one other comment. So if you look at photo number, let's see here. Well, you can see up and down the length of Horton Drive, there's a chain link fence on both sides. On the south side of the road, there is a landscape company, which is only accessed from another point down the street off of, not Burton Hill, but Old Jericho Road. That's where customers come and go. No customers access the landscape company at all off of Horton Road. Neither do any residents of the trailer park. They can't access. There's a full fence all the way down. So what you've got is very limited traffic, limited to the residents who live beyond this site. They live at the extremity, the far extreme of Horton Drive down on the end. The other thing I want to mention, if you ride around the applicant's existing park, it's not really an industrial park. I mean, when you think of industrial, you're thinking of very large, heavy use vehicles that might trigger a traffic impact study. But that's not the nature of that park. You've got a voter registration office, you've got Clemson Extension, you've got various county offices. These are all vehicle oriented, single vehicle oriented uses. The applicant can speak for himself as to the type uses he would propose, but my understanding is that based on what he said previously is that he would propose expanding his park in a manner similar to what's already there. The final thing I want to say is that it seems to me that for a city concerned with increasing its tax base and quality infill projects, that this is exactly the type of project that we need to be approving. So that's it. Thank you.
I had one question, Kurt. Can we condition, if we did do an approval, could we condition the specific connection from 118 to this property with roadway off of Industrial Park?
I don't think you can.
We can't
No.
condition anything.
Yeah, you can't condition any zoning. in
Condition
South
anything.
Carolina.
We have no stroke. What are we talking about here? We
It's
can't
okay.
change it.
But just for your information, I think I'm right
Yeah,
there at the Google Maps, just so everybody can see what it looks like. So that's Horton Drive, and I think that's what Paul's, if I
That's
think you have some
that's the
pictures,
point. If
so-
you stop right there, that would be the point where vehicles would enter the applicant's property. And
So
so the residences are beyond that, in that direction that Kurt's now showing.
Yeah, so
So there's no conflict between the actual residents down the way and the access. They'd never be going down that way. They'd be exiting onto Horton Drive and then exiting right onto Paris Island Gateway. So there's no conflict with those residents.
or road.
But
I
they're
think
gonna
we
be
determined it
driving
was
down
road
Horton
last
Drive
time, so.
Past the residents.
No, they're not driving down past the residents.
How do they get to Paris Island Drive?
Well, they drive past the landscape company on the south and the trailer park on the north, both of which are enclosed with a chain link fence. There are no residences there. There are no residences. And neither of those businesses access from Horton Drive with the exception of the occasional service vehicle that goes in that gate that I've shown on photo number 3. That's it. There is no traffic.
So to allow an access on Horton Drive
There you go.
that is unrestricted would, for the first time, bring commercial traffic to Horton Drive. Is that fair to say?
So I have the Google map, so you can see the,
Yeah, I think it would allow some
think-
additional traffic onto Horton Drive, but clearly it's a modern road. It's 20 feet in width. I mean, it can support it. There's no reason to imagine that it can't.
I think we should jump on to the applicant's presentation and then jump back on our discussions after the applicant and the public comments.
all right, Tony, I think let's go back to Zoom and let him screen share. Mr. Patterson, we couldn't get your presentation up in time. So if you can screen share it, that's how you'll have to present it.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. I'm seeing that my video portion is unable to start video. I have to need a permission to do that. Can y'all confirm y'all can hear me at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I can walk you through it even if I can't share this video, but right now I'm restricted from showing video, apparently.
Mr. Patterson, I've enabled panelists to be able to share video. You're a panelist, so you should have permission.
Let me see. Can you can y'all see this beginning of a presentation at this time?
Yes.
I will quickly go through some of these. Y'all already know generally. Can y'all see my cursor as well?
Yes.
Okay. Generally, this is this whole zone, what we call the Burton Triangle, was zoned both by the county and the city over many years, and many planning committees and presentations from land planners as the area that's designated for light industrial and business road-oriented uses. And that includes Beaufort Horton Drive in the county and all of the Burton Drive in the city. And that's why you have that R5 zoning on all of Horton Drive, and you'll see why in a few minutes. This presentation clearly shows the 3 acres in red. It's outlined. This is the existing industrial park. This is the main power distribution from all of the city of Beaufort, including standby power generation. This line right here that passes through this property, this is Horton Drive for those who can see that. That's the main high pressure gas line that feeds all of the larger facilities, including the air station, Paris Island. You've got Butler car dealership. They own this portion where they have their fleet cars and delivery cars and used cars stored in support of their operation. This is the the city's municipal complex. So all around you are industrial uses. This Horton Drive, this is the nursery that goes all the way to my property right here. That's defined by the chain link fence. And this is Greta Maddox owns this trailer park that's been there for 40 or 50 years, and it's completely enclosed with a fence. So from this section to that road is nothing but a 20-foot modern paved road. And the road that comes through the property, I'll go to the next site, zoomed in a little bit further. The cul-de-sac is right here where my cursor is. So if you were to access this only by the industrial park that's already currently in the city and own light industrial, you'd enter the single entrance, come here, come through the cul-de-sac. And I own this property in here. A little hard to see, but this whole section is about 2.6 acres. It's called Lot 9. And we recently sold off this little piece right here to an elevator person's building an elevator company. Steve Pizzo, they put in residential elevators in homes and small business. We would take off, and I've already planned a 50-foot easement right through this property, all of the remaining Lot 9 and into this property. And so the combination would be a 5-acre piece of lot 9 and the 3 acres of Horton Drive property makes a total of 5 acres. This, where that road would come through, would end up with that driveway right there. There's one single-family residential house right here. This is referenced historically, that's Mrs. Horton's house. This was her brother, Sergeant Horton. That house still there, still a residential home that I own and had considered putting residential stuff on it. At this time, it still has a driveway, water tap, septic tank, an abandoned well, and a house. I'll move on to the next property a little bit. It basically is a donut hole because this property here is Butler property that's been annexed by the city. And this is all in the city, and this piece is in the county. As it turns out, you'll see carefully that green looks a little over here. The road actually goes through this property. De facto, I own the roadbed in this small section that Horton Drive is on. To my knowledge, Horton Drive is a county road that was paved when it was a dirt road under what they call a prescriptive easement. They never got any true right-of-ways. It was a dirt road. They paved it where it laid and made a best fit for where the center of the dirt road was, and now gave everybody back in here a paved road. This property here is where everybody has the residences, working class folks. Been there a long time. It's a small, self-contained little bit of a community. It's had some issues in the past that they've gotten taken care of. There was some bad guys in crime. They ran them out of there. It's a pretty nice little neighborhood, got kids and everything else. There is no way a car would want to turn here. You can't turn around back in here. It tees into here and then it turns into dirt roads here in the back, I believe. I would have a right turn only road out of here that would only go this way, and a left turn with signage. And also the road would come this way, and it comes, I own this piece and this piece, that what you call 118 is actually lot 9 in my plats. So map parcel number 118, there's a 50-foot road that comes all the way through here, a right of way for a future road that would tie here. I could develop it without tying into Horton Drive. I paid about roughly $250,000 to buy this property because it had a home and 3 acres, because it gave me a second road access. And if I can't use that, then that's just me throwing a whole bunch of money away. I still have some land, but that'll be worked out as we get these plans approved or not. Just as to give you a little more clarity, this is what Horton Drive looks like. This is Butler Car Dealership. This is the house. This is where the 50-foot easement would come through here. We'd probably tear down the house and access the road here and turn right to go back out to the highway. You'll notice where the property line goes on the other side of the road. And same thing with Mr. Butler. He owns this property and his property line goes across the road. Basically, they just paved over our property to pave the road to give everybody access. For that little section, I own the road as well. That is not anything we can argue about. Prescriptive easement, the road is there. We're not going to do anything about the road, but it's unique that I own the road that I'm not being allowed to, or being suggested I shouldn't use. But that said, let's continue our discussion. This is what, another view there, this is what lot 118 looks like in y'all's paperwork. And that 50-foot comes right off here where there's an existing driveway. We used to have a gated area for a laydown area for secure storage. And that 50-foot would parallel right into here and then enter the property that's on Horton that's asked to be annexed. This is currently in the city, and they're planning a small building on a half acre of this land right there. Right here is City Electric. Y'all already know the narrative. I think we've already had a discussion about what we're trying to do. This is a photo of the two properties combined to give you an idea how it ties together. Car would come in off the cul-de-sac at this point, just to the right of City Electric, come through this property and tie in here with a kind of, we'd probably put a curve in the road. So it would be very difficult for any large trucks to turn left. We'd have a sign, no left turn, no trucks, and all the rest of that. I have other comments on that. And so what are we going to build? This is what the county economic developer has suggested, buildings like this. This is a two-story version. These are these other buildings. You'll notice that these aren't big industrial buildings with loading docks. This happens to be the county, and they have a truck right here. It looks like an RV. They deliver things. People have tractor trailers that deliver supplies like dock supplies and car parts and paint and all that kind of stuff. But primarily they're office and service business uses. It's not like the Commerce Park that the city has with lots of trucks, cement trucks and heavy equipment. Kurt has already talked to you that these are the two comparative between what the county would have as a RMX type use, regional mixed use in the county. And this is the light industrial zoning. Basically, I could do all the same uses that I plan under the current county zone. So if it doesn't get annexed, it's no particular problem. It's just harder to do it in the county, but that's okay. I just think this is better planning to tie it in and allow that to be tied into the road. Lastly, I have decided that I'm not going to fight or argue on any of these matters. If y'all decide not to annex it, that's fine. I would like to have a listen as to what, if this isn't satisfactory, and it sounds like people have concerns, perhaps y'all could share what you do think is satisfactory. I started working on this. I haven't recently bought these properties. I've owned some of these for 20 years and the Horton Drive for 10 or 15 years. I'm in no hurry to develop this property and have many other projects that I'm actively involved in. It's just timely to do this because I've had one sale on a lot. I need to do something. If we don't want to do this, and I went to city managers and the time Kurt's predecessor and the third person, the economic planning says, is this something that y'all would support? And everyone said yes. So as we stand here today, I would say I have more negative feedback from the planning commission than positive feedback. So somehow I feel I walked into a disconnect. That maybe this project isn't a desired thing. Certainly tied into that road seems very problematic. It seems like there's a group now, including the county, who will fight that. Anyway, we open to whatever y'all have to say on this. I'm not hell bent to put a bunch of heavy duty big buildings here. I'm building the same thing I was building because I don't have any more property to build on that serves this need, or very little, 2 lots left. And I think it's the right thing to do. Y'all want to put some conditions on it, let me hear them, and I'll go to the planning boards and see if I can't design something that meets those conditions and submit it to Kurt for staff review. Open to question.
So I have a question.
Yes,
So from what I'm hearing, so you have no intention of doing limited access just for emergency vehicles, is that correct, or?
I would, I want to listen to what y'all want to do. If y'all give Kurt that direction, that's where you'd like to go, I would attempt to do a plan to see if it works. I don't think it will, and I'll tell you why, because originally when I did the industrial park, which is here, you notice it's a little bit odd. This big loop goes around here and comes here. This is the entrance. Originally, my plan was to have 2 entrances. The other entrance came out here and lined up with this road. You see across the way that was owned by Mr. Neil Trask, and later my brother owned some of this property. And I had that approved, and when I went to permit, it was in 3 phases I permitted. The city said, no, we've heard other plans that they're going to want to put the road over here, and that the road's going to, the new road for this future property over here for apartments or whatever they were doing, isn't there. So she denied me the permit on the 3rd permit. So I had 2 accesses into the industrial park. So I had to redesign the entire 3rd phase, both the driveway and the storm drainage. And so it's very expensive to do that. So I'm down to 1 driveway cut for this entire business park with all of its current traffic. So it needs to have a second road. I looked at buying parcels here to put my own road in. I was gonna extend this into this property. None of these people were interested in selling it. There's churches, been there a long time. There's property, people living there. This was already paved road. In fact, I own a piece of it, and it was no houses on it. And it's paved 20 foot wide. I said, well, that's a good idea. Let me buy this piece and I'll connect this road. So I'm open to just leaving it to emergency stuff. I would do a plan, but I would tell you that the traffic study will tell you you're gonna overload this spot. If I do the traffic study, not just on this, but the whole thing, you're gonna see this point, this road is gonna be overloaded. It's also on a curve, you see. No. So there are other impacts to consider. But to answer your question directly, yes, I certainly am a business person. I would consider unlimited access if it allows the project to make business sense. I'm not adamant on it. If we don't want to do that, there are many other uses in the county, mobile homes, residential, agricultural, kennels, all kinds of uses that I could have just a little limited access with low traffic and not build these business park things we're looking at. I'll go do that somewhere else. So either one suits me. I'm looking for input from you of what the planning commission wants to do. And the city. I thought I had it pinned down, but I better shut up and listen more, not talk less.
Any other questions?
What is the classification of that Horton Road? Anybody know?
Did you hear that?
Horton Road, to the best of my belief, is a county maintained road with no right of way rights.
What is the classification of the road? What kind of load can that road?
Oh,
Is it rated? Is there, I don't know how the state of, I don't know how the county or the state of South Carolina codifies their roads, but
right.
rated, classified, what the heck, what kind of traffic can that road take?
Well, I think that's what the traffic, yeah, I mean, I think it's just a local road from what I can, from talking to the county. But I think they would require him to do the study, but likely, I think this is kind of catch-22 again, because, you know, his access would have to be allowed in the county because he's developing the property, right? And it's on a curve, and so, you know, they're gonna allow him to develop that property. It just might have some improvements, maybe it's no improvements, but I think I'm just throwing that out there, so.
We don't know what the, can that road take semis? Can it take a tank? Can it take a pickup truck?
It can,
That's again,
I've seen it take,
Criteria for the road.
I've seen it take the Oliver's, the gigantic Oliver's truck, which I don't know what they deliver into the landscape shop, but maybe mulch, you know, where they grind it. But it's a large, I mean, it's as large as a semi. So.
Yeah, that's a good enough challenge.
Are there other concerns other than the impact on the road? From a practical matter, if that was a 4-lane road with tractor trailers running, would there be other issues?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues, I
Right.
mean, in my point of view, with the, you know, just the residential, the people that use Horton Road. Yeah, so I think that's a good segue to the public comments. So we'll, if there's nothing else, Mr. Patterson, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comments, and then we'll jump back onto board discussion.
No, that's fine with me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll open it up to public comments. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and also please write it on the piece of paper up on that podium. And please keep it around 2 minutes, please, and try not to repeat previous comments. Thank you.
All right now, my name is Sandra Maloneson, and my address is 11 Horton Lane.
Can you help her with that mic? I'm concerned that I can barely hear her, and I want to make sure that it's.
Can you hear me now?
Could you say your last name again?
My last name is Malone Son. Most people pronounce it Melancon, but it's from New Orleans en français. Okay, thank you. Being a resident in the area from living in Horton, I've been a resident there since 1965. I've understand that what's going on now is a petition that we have our individuals that live back there, who have lived back there ever since I can remember. And the petition of the rezoning is, the cons that they have are the children who walk, and that's the only way they can get to Paris Island Highway to catch the bus. There's no other way, and they have to walk past this area, the 23 Horton Drive, that this gentleman is trying to develop into a business, that the parents, the elders are very concerned for the children who have to walk past here. And, you know, they're old enough to walk, but they're not used to having industrial traffic, you know, there. Also, with the elderlies, to find out if they have, excuse me, because I'm nervous in doing this, to have it there, our main concern is for the elderlies, the children, because for years, there's only been one way in and one way out. And it's always been residential area, never business, never. And this is that we're concerned with the children, the traffic, for the low income, the tax increase, and the hardship of the family and health concerns.
How would there be a tax increase?
Well, because we're seeing that it's a business, my associate that was with me, she did some research and saying, according to the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, commercial development often necessitates high public services, which turns into tax increases. So, basically, that's what we're standing out for in our residential area, to try to maintain as a residential area and the safety of our elderlies and our children.
So do elderly people walk down that road?
Yes, yes.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, you can't speak up unless you come to the podium and.
That's from the residents.
oh, wow, okay. Can we make this petition like an exhibit to whatever? Our meeting?
Can copy it right now, because it's just me here, but we'll.
The names and addresses of,
If you don't mind, we email it, that's great,
yes.
Let me, I have an app. Let me see if I can scan it.
Has the first person finished saying what she wanted to say?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Denise Doe. I'm talking for my mother, Arthur and Carrie Doe. I grew up in, we call it the Doe Hole, Harton Road, whatever, but I'm very concerned. The reason why is because like she said, the kids and the elderly people. And also when that landscaping came, they covered up the ditch. We don't even have a ditch to drain the water going through the road to come in. So, and it's very small, so I don't know. I just feel that we don't Um, I know the change gonna come and it's a nice area, but we're really concerned. I'm really concerned about my mom and my dad and my aunts, uncles, everybody, but that's all we know. I mean, I'm 51 and I've been there all my life. So, I mean, we do got Zaxby, but that's in the front, but we live in the back and Zaxby right in the front of my mother and them. And I feel that it's gonna be a very big change in impact. So
What
that's
was,
all I have to say.
what is your address and your mom's address?
7 Horton Court. We way in the back. And the Zaxby is right in front of my mother and father property, Arthur and Carrie Doe. Thank you.
Oops. All right, any other public comments?
I believe the court's at the very end there.
Is that?
Oh, I was just trying to put the map back up because I believe the court's at the very end. It's a little hard to see, but it's on that.
Yeah, it's like 11, 15, 9, 7 down there on the south part.
Hello, my name is Deborah Doe Burnett. I lived there all my life. My concern is the traffic, because how are we gonna, when we gotta come on our driveway and go to the road? We're gonna have a lot of traffic. If the industrial company comes in, it's gonna be harder for us to get out of our driveway. You know what I'm saying? We already have a hard time because of the traffic coming from Paris Island, and then traffic coming from, from Beaufort to go to Walmart. So we already have a hard time getting out of the driveway. So that's just gonna add more problems if we get, like a company or whatever into the area. It's gonna be really hard. We don't have a traffic light, we don't have anything. We have to wait there until, the traffic goes down for us to even get out to make the right turn or make the left turn, because there's so many traffic. Beaufort is really developing and it's hard. So if we add another business, it's gonna be even more difficult. That's my concern. So I understand that he wants his business and he bought the property and all that. But we were living there so long, it's gonna be difficult for us too. And we trying to figure out how we gonna, grasp with all this changes. So we already having a time.
Would it make it easier if there was another access through the industrial village?
Yes, it would. I mean, instead of, you know what I'm saying, you can't, I understand you want the business and it would be good, but the problem is, right, it would be better if you could have another asset instead of taking that road where we walk, or, you know what I'm saying? Some people don't have a car, some people gotta walk. You know what I'm saying? Gotta take, you know what I'm saying, the highway. Some people work in the morning, hard to get out in the morning. We got buses coming out, we got everything coming down that road. And then if we add more traffic, it'll be even harder to get out of the road. But if you could find another way, it would be better. Can you?
When you say, get down the road, do you mean to go from,
Yeah.
do you mean to go from Harton Court to Harton Road and then out to Highway 21?
I'm saying, we live in the back. So when we come to go out, we only have one way in, one way out. When we turn in and go home, and then when we leave to go out, we gotta go to that same road. One way in, one way out.
Yeah, I think you're talking about all that traffic that's on Paris Island Parkway.
All that traffic,
I don't think that's gonna,
all that traffic.
any relief at all, it's just gonna get worse. Well, I did have a question though about, as far as, kids walking from there to
In one.
Paris Island Parkway for the school bus and or elderly, would it be helpful if there was a sidewalk on
But
that
have-
road so that they didn't feel pressure from trucks and other vehicles coming down that road? That could possibly help the situation, I think.
But what you gonna do, widen the road? It's not even big enough to really, I mean, how,
I have no idea about
The
what
road
the
is really
engineering
bad.
of that road is. I'm just throwing it out there as whether or not that could be helpful if in fact something of that nature was done.
I'm just saying it's really narrow. The road is really narrow. I'm trying to figure out even how he gonna put the business. If they put it on 23, it's already a business behind there. I don't, you know what I'm saying? And it's a little, I don't know how it's gonna make it. I mean, it's not really that big. And then it's a house sitting right in front of where he's gonna put his residential. Someone's lived there and the building gonna be right there in front of their house. The business gonna be right in front of their door. And someone, right across, right? Okay, it's gonna be the business and then right across there is gonna be the business, the residential will be sitting right there. So they're gonna be facing each other. And then when you get there, is another residential area, then there's another one, and I don't know how they're gonna do it. People, I mean, just live down there. You just got one way in, one way out. How they gonna turn around? How they gonna get out?
All right.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. How are they going to get out? We already have problems getting in and out. We have to, if someone coming out of the driveway, we have to wait until they come before we can even go. Because it's like a circle. That's what I'm trying to figure out. How are they gonna do it?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Any other public comments? Is there any public comments online?
No hands raised right now, sir.
All right. If nothing else, we'll close the public comments and open it up to board discussion.
Do you want to go back?
Another question. Just help me with this, just because I'm just on this. When I look under, section 9.8.2, development plan or development design review,
Yeah, sure.
and when I look at applicability, and then I look and it says, non-residential development, any commercial development. So 9.8.2 development design review says that under that applicability provision, that it applies to any commercial development. And then when I go to the definition of commercial development, which, it's what I do, I go to the definition section to see how does it define commercial development? Or how does it define commercial? Hang on, it says, a term defining workplace, office and retail uses collectively. So, but I don't find a definition for workplace. So if commercial is defined as workplace, because it doesn't say under the development design review, it doesn't say applicability commercial zoning, it says commercial development. And when I go to the word commercial, it would say that's a workplace development. Well, and so here's what I'm getting at is that I would like there to be a design review process for something that occurred on this property, because that would allow us to deal with some of the issues that we've kind of talked about, how to mitigate the impacts. Because if all we're hoping for is that somebody might twist somebody's arm, but they don't have any legal authority to do that, then that's just it's pretty meaningless. It's just a wish, you know? So I'm looking for something that, you know, might be able to, you know, sink our teeth into, that would give you, or better yet, us, the authority to design, to review the ultimate design plan on this property. That said, what say you?
I can tell you that, yeah, industrial has been administratively reviewed. A lot of the code, I think, is predicated upon a staff level review. I mean, we're not stupid, right? So we would do a pretty strong review. I think the interesting thing about this case is there'd have to be some negotiation, obviously, with Mr. Patterson, because there's probably, you know, a public access easement would maybe serve the community just as much or more than, you know, what you're talking about, if he would allow that. But, you know, again, you're getting into the legal questions, and that is the challenge, right? So.
Well, I mean, I've always just been of a view, I mean, you know, that's why we have a code, is so people know what's required of them. And I don't like the idea that you just lean on people because you happen to be a
Yeah, I
bureaucrat,
mean,
and you
it's-
can do that. I'm looking to say, lean on them if you have legal authority to do that. And I'm looking at this and saying, to me, it sounds like
We would
we
make,
might actually, because development design review major, that's actually the authority of the planning commission. You know, and so I'm
I
trying to
think
understand.
that's the workplace, says
Yeah.
office, retail.
And so I'm wondering if it was just.
And we probably need
misinterpreted
to
or wrong.
tighten that section
Huh?
of the code. I mean, there's so many sections.
Maybe,
So,
maybe we actually have authority
but,
that you all don't think that we have, just because historically it's never been exercised, but it actually is clear in the code that we have it. I'm throwing.
I mean, I think, it probably should just be tightened, right? Because, the workplace doesn't have a definition, right? And
Doesn't have a
it's-
definition. It
that's-
sounds kind of like a business park. to
And
me.
the previous, you know, past precedent would be industrial development has been administratively. So
Yeah, and
that's the background. I mean, I'm just,
it's sort of a distinction without a difference, whether it's administrative or whether it's us. It's the question is whether it's us or whether it's administrative, whether the person exercising the authority has the discretion to do what might be advised to make sure that the impacts of industrial development on this road were mitigated. That's what I'm getting at.
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, from a staff level review, the comments would be that, you know, primary traffic should be from Industrial Park Village. Would you consider a 50-foot public access easement to provide another access point that would give all of the residents, you know, of course, that's an ask, right? And then, you know, with the curve in the road where the entrance would be located on Horton Road,
Well, and even if you
you could
could,
probably at best do a right in, right, you know, left in, right out there at that.
I don't think
point,
there's enough
right
right of way
trucks.
for a 3-lane section to have, you know,
Oh.
the way it would typically be designed, but maybe there's enough right of way that somebody could build a walking path along the edge of that pavement to get to the road that they say that they gotta get to for the school bus.
I would, you know, again, it's a county road and I don't know that the county's going to put a sidewalk down that road and, you know, that's a challenge, you know, these are all challenges. I'm just being realistic.
I'm just trying to help.
But yeah, I think that's the question here is what are you comfortable with? So.
Is that part of their TIA to see if they could add a sidewalk or need a sidewalk or on that?
It's traditionally not part of our TIAs.
I think the TIA, what it would really be looking at, the way I worked on TIAs, it would really be looking at it from the standpoint of how much additional traffic are gonna end up using this section of road, not because of this lot, but because of the entire industrial park now having access to this section of road, and whether the pavement that is there or the right of way that's there is adequate to add an additional lane so that you had enough width for, you know, one way out and enough coming in so that you could have a separate turning lane. So, but it doesn't look like, when I just look at the pictures, if that's 20 feet, there's probably only between those fences, I don't know, maybe there's enough 30 feet.
And I think,
But-
you know, again, the challenge of this is and I'm probably saying too much, as Mr. Patterson
He's not
stated,
gonna
it was
do it.
never a platted road. It was
I get it.
essentially a farm road. I mean, for lack of a better word, that became a county road.
But that doesn't mean that
So-
by virtue of prescriptive rights, that there isn't enough, essentially what we would consider right of way to be able to improve it, if somebody wanted to do that.
There might not be, but I mean, just for those two sections of road, they're owned by those properties, so there is not, I mean, there's prescriptive easement, I think after a certain, I mean, so there's a lot of legalities here, but I'm just saying that I would doubt that, is that section of road platted? I don't think it is, probably, most likely, so I just would
Well, then-
caution you on
But here's my
trying to
point.
expand the road. I
My
don't
point
think
is,
that's a
it was
realistic.
said, here's my point, it was said earlier that if it stayed in the county, that the county would require a TIA,
would.
and the only reason to do a TIA is to determine whether there's any additional road improvements that could be made, but if you're saying that there isn't enough right of way there to do them, whether it's the county or
Might
whether
not
it's the
be.
city, then it seems like all of that is just fruitless.
I'm talking about like a sidewalk and everything. I mean, we'd have to do a lot of plat research that I don't think we, contemplated here, since these are not legal powers we had. But if this was not a platted road and that large portions of the road were easements or basically farm paths, I would doubt that there's much, I don't know what it's complicated, right?
Here's my final thing, is all I'm saying is, I think there's value, I agree with Steph, I think there's value in bringing it into the city. And I'm just looking for a way, and if I voted for bringing it in and for zoning it, I would continue to try to find a way in this code, try to find the authority for the city to do something to improve the circumstances for these people, rather than just saying, there's nothing we can do and throw our hands up. Because it sort of sounds like that may be the way it is with the county if he stays in the county, because there's no reason to do a traffic impact study. If you look at it, you say, well, there's not enough road not enough right away for anybody to make any improvements anyway.
I mean, I think you get into and you're an attorney, right? If this was your client, and let's say this was a prescriptive easement, and this is his only access and his road, and it does allow industrial, even with the TIA, what additional improvements would they be legally allowed to have them make if there's not even the
If they don't have the
road?
right of way to make.
Because they have a legal right to access the property and you've given them the industrial. So I just would caution you, I think this is getting kind of complicated. I mean, I think to me, the question is, do you want it to be part of the city? If the city does it, I mean, I guess from a best planning practice, for him to dedicate, but we can't legally require it, 50-foot of, as he was saying, 50-foot of public access easement, so they could basically give a second route for both entities, both the residents and the industrial park, and allow it to be part of the industrial park, and, consolidate with the industrial park. I think is a net positive over staying in the county, knowing that they have to basically allow him access on this road, and they can't consider that with their approval. I think that's maybe the crux of the issue, and these code issues are just what they are, and this is a very difficult situation because how it was zoned and how it was developed in the past. I mean, this is a very difficult situation, so it's not something that you see every day, but I think that's where we're at in today's world, seeing these kind of things, so. That's just a staff level version of this. so.
I think there's another question too that has come up with the community, and that is, if there's a new 50-foot right-of-way road put in on 18 connecting to Horton, is that an improvement to that community down there? Because they then have a different access, and if there was a sidewalk that was a part of that roadway, would that change the dynamics of, how they utilize the roadway system for the community? I don't know the answer to that, but that's.
It may be, I mean, it may be, and I'm just trying to say the difficulty, I don't want to speak for the county, but if this was developed, if this was a prescriptive easement like it is on his properties and the car dealerships properties, it's going to be very difficult for the county to come in and with that TIM require Mr. Patterson or the county to acquire right of way to expand this road. I think that's going to be a very difficult task legally, even with the TIA to require. And so maybe that's, I just think everybody needs to
Yeah,
realize that's probably unrealistic with this. And so, anyway.
So I just want to say that I have taken photographs of this petition that's signed by 30 people. And also I'm going to mispronounce your name, Sandra Melancone. It's a letter, 2-page letter. I've emailed it to Mr. Freeze and Ms. Bichetti and everybody on the commission. And I would like that to be made a part of the minutes of this meeting so that everybody has it. And if Mr. Freeze wants to take these and make better photocopies, that's up to him, but at least we have it and everybody has access to it for now. My concern is, well, first of all, matter of perspective, we don't know what the county's gonna do. The county has not acted on this. My understanding, no application to the county has been made. So all of that is speculation. We have before us an request for annexation, and should we approve the annexation request for zoning classification? So, but question number one is the annexation, and we hear from the applicant that he absolutely wants that access on Horton Drive. That is part of the whole plan. And not only do we hear that, but we also heard that that he has long wanted to have 2 accesses to the existing industrial park in Beaufort. Thought he had 2, but something happened and ended up with 1. So not only is this access just for this parcel that they're adding into the industrial park, it's access to the whole industrial park. It's the second access that's long awaited. In fact, without that access, the applicant told us that it would overtax the existing access to the industrial park if they were just to add the parcel in there. All of that is very concerning to me in light of the residents are talking about. They are not talking about big trucks running around in their neighborhood by their houses. They're talking about that portion between the proposed entry and Paris Island Gateway, where children have to go and get on the bus, and elderly people also traverse that area. And if this access is allowed as a result of what we do here today, if we approve annexation, we are basically saying, okay, you can have this access, it can be part of the industrial park. We have no ability to require any road improvements or anything at all, any conditions whatsoever to this project. And the applicant's made it clear, and I appreciate the honesty. He wants that access. That's part of his plan. So my concern is that, if we approve it, we are not in a position to do anything to address the concerns of the residents of the neighborhood or otherwise protect the future situation. So personally, I'm opposed to the annexation, and will vote that way. I leave it to the county. The county has some additional tools as requiring that the study, possibly they can work with the applicant as far as additional things. The residents can bring their case to the county. We can do nothing to protect this situation for the residents at this board. From what we're hearing from our staff advisor, we can impose no conditions, and the applicant's been very honest with us and said, no, I'm not going to agree to any of those conditions. So that's why I'm opposed to the project.
Mr. Patterson, do you have any comments back in relation to the residents' concerns and any other final comments for the board?
He's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm being painted somewhat as the bad guy here, which I personally resent, but let me move on. We're all grown up. As we're hearing this, I'm sketching out various plans, which is what I do as a civil engineer, longtime planner, multi-generation Beaufortonian, doing this for 50 years. I have about 4 different plans that would have no access to Horton Drive. And it's not essential I have that to make my industrial park work. It's actually not required for me to do anything to make that work. I propose that we do multiple plans that try to take care of the Horton Drive people. I'm grown up in this community for many years, very sensitive to the same issues we're talking about. Who wants all this damn traffic in my backyard? I live on the point. I don't like the carriages or the tourists or people I didn't grow up with, which is about half the people on this committee who didn't live here when I grew up as a child. It's their cars and their stuff in the roads, but that's the reality. I would say that I could develop this and not have any access to Horton Drive. And if that's what y'all want to say to try to do, I will attempt to execute on 4 or 5 of the plans I have to do that. One of the ways is, won't span them all out here, I'd like to set up with a professional planner such as Kurt, and we'll look at all that. One of the ways, if we want to put that drive through there and they want to make it a public road, let's make all of the roads public there, and we'll just have an extended public road system as part of this project. It's not a bad idea. That would be one of the plans. So, but it seems to be problems with that. So I don't know that we're going to decide here what that plan is. I think it's foolish to try to plan it till you know what the rules are. And I'm either going to go with the county rules or the city rule. And that's why I brought it this committee to decide which rule are we going with, county rules or city rules? And we need to start there. At some point, we're going to have to stop the conversation and have a vote. And I think we're kind of timely for that. I'm not unhappy either way that y'all vote. So if y'all think y'all don't want to do that, then say so and turn down the annexation or the rezoning, really. And we can go forward from there.
I do have a question for you, Kurt. Can Mr. Patterson come back with a site plan and us approve annexation and zoning as well as the site plan and stick to that site plan?
No.
Can't make it, we can't have any contingencies on zoning when the annexation.
He could agree to an annexation agreement. That would have to be worked out.
Which we don't have one. But if
We don't
there
have
were
one.
to be one negotiated in the future,
He could
you come back to us
negotiate.
with that.
He could. Other than that, no.
All right, is there any other discussions otherwise?
Yeah. We've got a couple down here.
Yeah, I've got a question, please. Could you tell me, please, someone in the audience, where the children are picked up for the school bus? So in other words, the school bus stops in the middle of Paris Island Gateway and the children get on the bus? That's the way it works. Thank you.
All right, anything else? I'll take a motion whenever.
But let me just say last thing, I wish that since we're in the process of revising the development code, this is one of the areas where, that I brought up that I think we need to examine is if for some odd reason staff has been, or the practice has been, or the interpretation of the code has been that we exclude industrial from our from our design reviews. We can change that. And I think we should. I mean, I don't know why we would require a review of every retail development, but not an industrial development, unless, the idea was just to cut industrial slack, which, there might be certain reasons to do that, but this is a good example of why I think we would like to have that authority. As I sit here, I'm not entirely sure that we don't have that authority, and it may just be that the practice has been not to bring the industrial cases to the design review board and now this planning commission. I do think that the city of Beaufort tends to do a good job with things. I mean, there's been dramatic improvements throughout this city in the time that I've been coming here and living here. And so frankly, I have a lot of confidence that this city administration and this planning commission going forward is going to keep improving all sorts of areas of the community in ways that I'm not necessarily confident about the county, and I don't have any role, and we don't have any role in the county. So even though I'm very sympathetic to what these neighbors say, I think on balance, in the end, I tend to come down on these things as if we can make these things a win-win, and that's sort of the way I went through my practice in life, was always looked at every application as an opportunity to not only do something that was important to my client, but in the process, do something good for the community. And that's why I always design things. Had I brought this forward, I probably would have included that element in here. Some kind of way of promising that the whole situation would be better in the end. But I think where I'm coming down is I think that between the code revisions that we're in the process of making and maybe the authority that's already in there, that there may be enough that we can do to make the situation better for the neighbors, addressing some of their concerns in ways that otherwise we have absolutely no guarantee by just leaving well enough alone. And that's why I think I'll vote for it in the end, because I think there's a way to address their concerns and make those improvements at the time the gentleman applies for, specific plan for developing the property.
So are you ready for motions?
Yep.
I move that the petition for annexation be denied. And that I believe would render the zoning classification request moot.
All right.
So even if you turn the one down, you'll need to turn this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deny them, modify the motion to deny the petition for annexation and deny the zoning request.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Let's vote by raising of our hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Is that right? Did I count that right? Okay. Do we
was the
need to
count?
make a motion for the other?
I think
Because they were scheduled 3, 4, 5 days.
43.
Okay, we'll make an additional motion based on the previous motion that already did it, that we deny the zoning request as well.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed?
Just to be consistent.
All right. Motion passes. All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next one I think was also tabled. I'll give a little more of a background on this one because I don't think it had that full review that you had last time. And get all of our technology to work really well. Okay, so
Ms. Reese?
Sure.
before we start, This is the paperwork. I don't know if you're gonna take it or we're gonna return it to. I know she might need it for county in the future.
challenging. Losing your staff, right? You gotta do it all. Okay, so this was also a project that was tabled last meeting. This is also a project that I've inherited, but it's got a lot of background on it. It's also, kind of a unique project. I think, again, all projects I think that are coming before you are definitely not the easiest projects in the world, right? They got a little complexity to them these days. So what's being proposed, and maybe I can just go to a map, be a little easier, is here at the old bowling alley on this is 1140 Rebo Road. So the applicants have purchased this old bowling alley and they're proposing to turn it into a self-storage facility. It is zone T5 UC, strangely enough, which is our highest density district. It's an urban kind of district that's intended for very high density urban development. The T5 UC district does allow self-storage facilities with a number of conditions. At the last meeting, those conditions and the complexity of that is, I think, what predicated the tabling, because some of those were not considered, I think, previously. And that's why we recommended to table it, because they were missed, I think, until we looked at it and kind of realized some of those issues at the meeting. And that's really kind of I think a mistake here with that was made, and obviously I'm taking it on now. And so what basically the T5 UC district requires is that a self-storage facility has to be a mixed-use facility. That's basically the best way I can explain it, with a bunch of design principles. So what was triggered and what's in your packet, you've got all the references of that, is that there's a number of conditions that I think both the applicant, my staff, former staff, and even our city architect, I think we're maybe a little bit unclear about, because this has never been tried before. And that is, you can do such a facility if it's 300 feet behind the, here we go, 300 feet behind, deep from the road, if it's 300 feet deep in a multi-story facility. Or if it's a liner building exists. So in our code, liner buildings, it's a form-based code, are basically to break up uses and provide essentially that urban element, that core elements on every major street. And so what I think was confused last time is the applicant was going forward with a plan in which they were 300 feet back with the building. They decided to make it a 2-story building with residences on top. If you analyze the code, and again, that was the staff's fault. I realized that it had not been sent to our architect or to other reviews at the last minute after it already gotten noticed. And that is that it triggers the large footprint building that's in your staff report, and also the liner building requirement. And the liner building requirement, while it sounds like it should be detached, like I think you see a lot of these liner buildings detached around the city and the area where you have, like the Chipotle, right? In front of in front of the mall, or the new Buford Station, where you have those buildings in front. It also requires, or they can be attached on every major thoroughfare or any public street. And so you have 2 options and 2 requirements. That's, I don't think, very terribly clear. I think that we're making that very obvious, that you both have to do a multi-story building. It should be 300 feet back. If you do such, you either have to provide an attached liner building, which obviously in this case has to be something other than storage, of 25 to 30 feet in depth, or an actual detached liner building like those buildings out at Buford Station or at Buford Plaza, that are, completely different, like retail or office uses. So if that makes sense, and then furthermore, if you're going to do these things, the parking should be to the rear. And so, There's obviously a lot going on here, so that's big. Hopefully I've explained this. Does everybody understand that? Because it's a little complicated. So the applicant and the time that, we had the last meeting had done the former. They had done the 300 feet back. They had done the mixed use, residential building, that's 2 stories. What they had not done is considered the liner, and the large scale building requirement that those liner buildings either have to be attached or detached to every street. And so those streets, since, oops, went too far. Sorry. Would be the street there, it's, I think Bowling Lane and Rebo Road. The street to the back is a private, like, easement, so we would not require that a public street since it's privately owned. And just out of sympathy, I think, as well, because it would make it very difficult to do a 3-sided liner building where there's not really a, anyway, but so those 2 streets have to have a 25 to 30 foot at least wide attached liner or detached liner upon. So they've gone back to the drawing board and hopefully did you all have a presentation to bring tonight? Because I didn't know if I got one. Okay, we're gonna have a hard time getting that up. So I'll just pull up the website. So they've gone back to the drawing board and basically the first floor, they've added that basically commercial office fronting Bowling Lane and Rebo Road. The challenge that they still have, if this makes sense to everybody, is the parking on the corner of Rebo Road and Bowling, which I shouldn't have turned this off. So I was trying to get the other up. Oops. The challenge is that there is a recorded deed restriction on this corner section that basically requires it, they're tied to parking there. And so that is an interesting issue that is faced because the code obviously doesn't want parking or doesn't really allow parking to be forward of any structures. And so, the challenge that you're facing tonight, but that we are deed restricted with our property that they purchased to not change that essentially. They're proposing to screen it with landscaping. We're proposing basically to subdivide, if this was to be approved, is that this lot would be subdivided out. So it'd be parking is ironically allowed as a standalone use in and of it by itself in T5 UC. So we would apply those standards of T5 UC to standalone parking, which is that landscaping and screening on that lot, knowing that it would indeed actually be serving this. And just because of that deed restriction, we're not trying to get around the code. They just have this legal obligation that they can't violate. And so it's not something we would bring forward if that were not the case, but I think we want to be clear on what's going on. And so this has had the full architecture review. So Jeremy has provided the comments that you have in your packet. And I think you have all of their 3D renderings in your packet. I'll try to pull that up right now while we're here. And I think that, obviously they've done a tremendous amount of work in a month to get here. And I apologize for the delay just because there were, I think, issues that were maybe predicated on our end unintentionally that we didn't want to delay them an extra 5 weeks if they didn't get on the agenda. So they were able to get those in by like Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. So that's why your packet was a little bit delayed because it took them a little time to get all that, or their architect. But let me pull that up for you. And that's pretty much the presentation on this. You see the staff, they're basically only 2 or 3 comments of any note. But I think, we're pretty confident with what they've done. I think meets the code, and, I think they're satisfying the intention of the code, which is, if you're going to do self-storage, it would basically be forced to be made attractive and mixed use. So, I think the applicant is, obviously spending a lot of time and effort and money providing additional commercial space and residential space to have this use, for the city. You know, again, it is an allowed use in that district. So let me pull up there. Oops.
So Kurt, while you're pulling it up on the, I have a question for you on liner buildings.
That's the problem.
So their liner, building is basically office space. I mean, how, is that a rented space or is that part of the storage? Or I guess it might be more a question for the
I
applicant.
think that's a question for the applicant. I would ask them.
I've got a question or two, please. So except for the two-story portion of the proposed building, they could have the storage there without the 300-foot rule if it was a single story. Is that right?
Say that again.
Without the liner building, in other words. If it were just storage with no second story, they wouldn't be required to have a liner building. Is that right, or am I wrong about that?
I think you'd be wrong. They would have to, in every situation, they'd have to have the liner.
All right, and
They're
they're
attached to-
precluded from putting a liner building by a third-party private restriction on the front, so they can't do it.
On the front corner that is deed restricted, yes.
Yeah.
And so,
So they have to put the liner building on even though it's merely residential or manager office space up top. Doesn't make
on
any
the
difference.
portions of this, I would ask them, but from what I understand on the corner. Now, there is a section they could do a liner building in the future. That's kind of further to the south. But again, we'll let them answer that since we did look at, we did see that, we did request that document. It is, we verified that that is definitely the case. And so, yeah. There's having so many issues here. All right. Let me look and see what it said. So this is the new submittal. And it's not the easiest thing to, can't really access a lot of things here. Have to try to, but this is kind of a representation of what we're talking about. So again, that lot, that's where my cursor is, I understand. And again, they can verify that, the applicant, when it's their turn, that this could indeed have a liner building. This is where the deed restriction is. Again, this is an existing, bowling alley, right? Or old bowling alley, laser tag, whatever building that's there right now. I think everybody's aware of that. So that is what they're rehabbing.
Could we go back to one of those prior slides that shows a certain part of the building highlighted?
Sure.
In a darker color, please? A little bit, next one perhaps. So this one right here, am I to understand correctly that the areas that are darkened are areas that are being added to the existing building?
That's correct. They're adding all those, and that's the new additions from the last meeting to satisfy the code.
Is that addition, what constitutes the liner building?
It says in the code, a liner building is attached or detached. If attached, is 25 to 30 feet in depth, as you see in your code, in your packet. I just quoted all of that, so you had that all available to you without. And you have some nice pictures in your packet and we can go down to those. And I'm sorry, their presentation kind of got butchered a little bit here with this. But you have it all in front of you. You have everything that was sent to us in front of you, I think in a nice color photos, so. See what that looks like.
This might be a question for the applicant, but if you could answer it, Kurt. Is the intention to change the concrete parking lot into some kind of pavers? Is that accurate to what they're proposing?
That's a good, you know, we haven't really discussed that completely, but I'll let them handle that one.
Okay.
But here's kind of if you're ready for the applicant to make their. Ready.
All right, thanks, Kurt. We'll jump on to the applicant's presentation.
You got a private covenant. Anything.
No, on the pavers, that's the rendering folks that are getting creative with.
Okay, so what is it gonna be?
It's existing pavement, it's gonna be resurfaced,
Okay,
repaved.
so the driveway that we're seeing, that's
Correct. On this photo here, the driveway that you're seeing,
is
the
asphalt,
driveway itself is correct.
is correct. The driveway is correct.
Where it's changed, I don't know what the color, it would be all the same color.
So there's no differentiate, there's no like artistic.
Not at this point. When we go with our buildings across Rebo Road in the future, that will all be differentiated. Do you happen to have a slide with that you asked for, but it's actually color coded? I think it's blue and yellow. And did that get through the system on one of your package? It's very clear on what the liner buildings are. So, Kurt, how do I go back to the building that Mr. Trask asked for?
You know what? It didn't get printed in color. That's the problem. They have a lot of patience. I'm just gonna say. Oh, okay. I think you're looking at, yeah, there you go. This has,
Yeah, so let's just take one of these sheets and just have the applicant tell us.
yeah, that's our
Where the
fault. I think
liner
he
is.
had it in color and we printed in black and white, but we printed the 3Ds in color. I apologize. And the way it was scanned in here, it got scanned in black and white too, so.
I'm gonna start with north. Going, there's a handicap parking, entering the front of the building. About that same level, the horizontal line that separates the liner building is being added to the site on the north of the drawing.
I don't even see a north arrow on this thing, so I'm trying
Going
to.
in the north.
Top of the page.
So the top is north?
The top is north.
All right, so the structure that you're adding along Firehouse Road, the existing Firehouse Road, we see a line of, looks like a hallway with doorways entering spaces. Is that?
Correct. Those are gonna be customized for individual offices. There'll be a conference room, restroom, the break room, and then.
So those will not be used for storage. That'll be used, they'll be commercial offices.
They'll be finished as such with flooring and wainscoting, whatever is necessary to make a real.
Individual office
individual
spaces.
office.
And then likewise on the,
On the east
I
side.
guess on the east side facing Rebo Road, that's also those spaces that we see darkened, those will be office spaces as well.
Correct. Down to the dark horizontal line, almost where the driveway comes off of Rebo Road.
Okay, and
Below
so
that is residence.
below that is residence, but the residence is in the second floor, right?
Residence is
over that addition. For instance, is over that addition,
So down below, where we see master bedroom and bedroom 1, bedroom 2, down below, that's also office space? Upstairs and downstairs? Okay, so downstairs, the upstairs will be leased to third parties as an apartment.
I apologize, I don't remember from the last meeting, but could you give us your name for the record? And I asked this out of more curiosity than anything else, why is there a manager's quarters being added to the self-storage unit? I know that, but I'm just, I don't know, I just thought it was odd to live in a self-storage unit, but.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. Right.
So the parking for the managers are represented there on the south side there where you've got a proposed. Yep. And so then the overflow parking, what's the intent there? So that parking that's laid out there and labeled overflow parking is really intended to serve the offices that'll be leased. What about the remainder of the space between the building and Rebo Road? What's the intent there? So that's a future idea.
Is that parcel 19 that kind of like that panhandle?
So that's a future use parcel.
But he intends to put one here and. Saying, we'll make the long range plan. Those two down here.
So I'm a little bit confused about the parking. And on this slide, I guess we're looking at slide 100. So, I counted 17 offices plus a conference room and a break room in your new addition. Is that correct?
Not too bad.
Okay.
Want to have 3 bodies, you know, we're accepting 2 offices. So we're gonna, it's gonna be built. It's gonna be added, like, for how much space.
So up to 17. And then we have 2 apartments on the bottom floor. These are, or on the top floor. These are, how many bedrooms are these apartments? Okay, so there's those. And then the manager's residence is larger, more bedrooms, and there are 2 designated parking spots for that over on the yeah? Okay, where, you're saying there's gravel area parking?
Different color.
Down in here.
parking for the residents,
Uh-huh, that's additional parking, that gravel?
different parking and driveway for
Okay. And then the parking for the self-storage, are those the parking spaces that line that go along the edge of the building, like on the west side? There's a few, 1, 2, 3.
that side.
Yeah, the left side.
There's 5 spaces on the rear of the building, on the
Uh-huh.
west side.
Okay,
And then there's places in the loading area on further north.
okay,
There's places in the.
okay, but the,
Long-term parking, but the big, the low number, they're along the back end of the. Handicap crossing.
the only employees of the self-storage facility would be the manager, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so,
We have plans for this.
but they're in and out, they're not there all the time,
Everybody.
but they like come at night. Yeah, okay, all right.
So just for clarification, you mentioned that the road, the existing entrance as represented on this sheet, you would move that to the south eventually so that where it is now would become a buildable frontage lot along Rebo. Is that correct? Are you proposing any temporary uses in that front parking lot until such time as you present a development plan for new buildings? No?
Are you going to landscape at all parcel 19 or that section that we're talking
Yes,
about?
we're gonna do it. It's over the wetland. Landscape along Rebo Road, we're screening the entire park. It continues across the driveway, up to the bowling lane.
But for example, parcel 19, are you not gonna grass that in or anything? Or in the property line, I'm talking about the area. I'm looking at parcel 19, and then north of that, on the other side of the driveway, you have the open area. Is that space going to be sodded, grassed? What's gonna go in that flat space? Basketball courts? I don't know.
And right now, it is a parking lot.
Okay, but you're not including those parking spaces in your requirements for the building.
No, the parking that's there now in the study, when we do,
Okay,
building, they don't have this all parking behind.
okay.
So it's just gonna be blank asphalt for now.
For now.
That's the.
Yeah.
Rain, it will be rain.
Are you, planning on, I didn't see trees on the, in front of the bowling part, the bowling, the existing structure, basically, not parcel 19. You mentioned you added trees there, but when I drove by there today, I didn't notice any street trees are you intending to add trees there to comply with the street section or street requirements of Rebo? I believe there's correct me if I'm wrong, that there's first section appendix C dot 6.25. There needs to be 40 feet on center max of overstory trees. Rebo. Yeah. Yeah, basically that whole line. that whole- Oh, so it's not something that we're reviewing, the,
I was trying to touch on that before.
okay. Yeah.
So can you outline with the cursor what area needs to be subdivided off?
That northeast little portion that you see some parking on, does that make sense to everybody?
Are you talking about the overflow parking and the blank part underneath it? Or are you talking about what is the entire area that needs to be subdivided?
He'll have to subdivide basically that
parking lot.
northeast section, from north of the new entrance drive that they're proposing, or I guess it's the same entrance drive and that whole corner.
So, from the,
From both entrance drives and that kind of weirdly shaped,
okay, so that whole section needs to be subdivided to be approved as a parking lot or something.
it'll have to be approved as a parking lot, yes.
So what we are
So
being
that's something you have
asked,
to consider because, I mean, it is,
so what,
Yeah.
it says here, this slide is called Site Development Plan Entire Parcel. What portion of this are we being asked to approve today?
so you're basically approving, I mean, I essentially what they're proposing here. It's just some additional things will have to be proposed with the parking lot. And if you don't feel comfortable that they haven't provided all of that with the parking lot, I would maybe consider it as a preliminary conceptual and then ask for, an in-depth landscape plan maybe for that section later, at a later meeting, if that's your will. But I think you've got I have to say this is one of the most involved uh, site plans I've ever seen in my entire career because of all the strange, all the conditions. So I'm not trying to say that flippantly, but it's a lot. So we got the 75%. So there's really a few things. It's that 75% build out percentage and the parking that needs to be behind that percentage. So, if this project if he was bringing in this project today, right, and the bowling alley didn't exist and they weren't trying to redo the self-storage with an existing building, there would have to be basically a building along the corner of Rebo Road and then parking behind it. I think that's what's being discussed, but there's a deed restriction that a building can't go there. And so I think they're asking that, hey, they're meeting all the other sections of the code with the liner building and the 2 stories and the architecture, et cetera, that, instead, the proposal would be that they'd subdivide out that lot, make it into a parking lot with screening. And I think you're asking, we want a little more detail, and I don't know that they've provided all of that detail yet, since, yeah. Does that make sense? Hopefully I answered your question.
Well, I guess, looking at this picture, so we start in the top left corner. We go down, do we go all the way down to the bottom left corner, or do we stop at that line that goes across?
Okay, and he's not proposing any, so essentially, he's not proposing anything in that southeast corner either. That's for future
Okay, so
development.
what about the southwest corner that looks, other than the gravel, it looks pretty blank?
That's not owned by the applicant.
Okay,
Those
so,
are separate lots.
so where are the limits of the site?
You're seeing the limits of all the site that he owns, with this
Except
site
for the
plan.
southeast corner?
Well, no, you're seeing it right here. It's just that's not being proposed for any improvements, essentially. Oh, no, I think she was talking about this whole. Section.
Yeah, I was talking, where the cursor is right now, there's basically nothing there but gravel. So is that the site plan? Is it
Yes.
supposed to be, is it gonna be something in the future?
Yes.
Okay, but for today, we're not being asked to approve.
Ma'am, that's grass and live oaks that we just planted on the south
Okay.
line. And back to your comment on the parking lot that's in the northeast corner, I would be very comfortable removing the pavement between the parking area and the street and planting live oaks in there, because they can grow there. Under the power line, we'd have to use something like a Chinese elm or Japanese elm, something that's limited in height. We have myrtles now that grow just about the same height as they would. But, we can certainly meet that requirement if that's what we need to do. If that's what the code says, we can modify the planning, and Kirk we'll give him the plans that we need to do to make that happen.
If you'd like to have them come back, that would be fine. So the parking, it's quoted in your staff report, is section 4.5.10.7 is a minimum of 75% of all parking shall be located behind the primary building or a liner building. So that's what I've been referencing. And then the 75% the 75% minimum frontage build out is being technically fulfilled, and that's in section 4.5.9B2 by the attached liner building. So that's how that's being addressed. Does that make sense? So really what we're left with is that 75% parking behind the liner building or the primary building of section 4.5.10.7, which they have the deed restriction in that they can't build a liner building in. So, and they have no other, because of the location of where the bowling alley is, there's dimensionally not the ability to put it anywhere else. And so I think that is a code section that, can be accomplished by cutting it out and doing it as a parking lot by itself. But you have to, this is something that I think they're very open about, and we're very open about. It's something you have to decide, because it is contrary to code. This is a way to make it work under the code.
I want to
So
add,
so would we be approving this subject to that corner, that northeast corner being separated out? Would that be a condition of the?
I think
approval?
that could be a condition of approval, and I'm sorry with all the lateness and I was on vacation the week before, so only had 2 days to do all this stuff. So yes, I think that would be a good condition to place
Okay.
on it. And if you'd like to see a site plan and with a landscape plan for that, come back before you, that's something you.
I did have one other question. In the northeast corner of the property where the overflow parking is shown, there's also some very specific curbing. Is that part of what's going to be constructed when this happens?
There's no curbing. That's just defining the area. It would be painted.
Oh, so it won't be curbing, it'll just be painted.
Correct.
So that'll still be one big open asphalt area.
What I'm saying is, we can certainly, in that corner to the right between the lot and Rebo Road, we could remove that asphalt and plant live oaks in there, because there's no limits above.
Whereas we get out to the street, we're limited with the power lines.
But for now, you were thinking of just basically painting the edges of the driveway so people know.
We can go ahead and plan on doing, I'll put that in the plan, that we'll plant trees on that
Okay,
entire space between Rebo Road and the parking lot.
I think we're talking a lot about theoretical stuff. I'm with Kurt. I think that if we move forward with basic approval, I think there's a lot of things I'd like to see a site plan come back that's much more specific about exactly what your property boundaries are for this particular project, what the other potential areas are, some landscaping, and if you're gonna move that entry road, move it to where you want it to be so that we can look at something and know that it's finalized.
As a future,
Here's the landscaping
back,
they're
yes.
proposing, and again, they're not, the southeast portion is future development. When they do the future development, it would come back before this planning commission, whenever that may occur. I think he's obviously, this is what they're proposing for the landscaping. So it's in, I think there's some question about the live oaks. I just would caution you that if they do develop the southeast portion, it will have to be up against Repo Road under the code, right? It has to be basically a 0 to 10-foot setback. So, we're talking about the live oaks and the trees, but they might have to be cut down in
but I think
this section, so.
wasn't he talking about putting live oaks in between the overflow parking and the driveway? Isn't that what he's talking about versus
Okay.
putting them in the south?
between the overflow parking and Rebo Road.
Right, okay, but what about the asphalt area?
He's talking about here, right
What
here.
are you just talking about doing them along Rebo? Is that what you're saying?
Is that a better slide? So he's got a landscape plan here where he's showing it all the way down,
Okay,
Rebo. And I'm sorry, we were using the other slide because it was just the site plan, and this should all be in your packet, these slides that have the landscaping, so.
so that area between the building and Rebo Road, north of the driveway, that's still gonna be just empty for now.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's a future building site
Got it.
with parking in the rear. But we will take out the pavement for the northeast corner and plant
Okay.
before.
So I think what you're discussing is he's got wax myrtles there and proposing, very tightly, I think because of the power lines. That's why you were proposing that, because there are overhead power lines there. So I think, if you're going to do a grander tree, right, it needs to be, I understand the code, but there are the realities and then the future reality of the 0 to 10 feet. So, you'd need to do a condition, or bring this back with, a taller, overstory tree. And maybe, that would be set back a little bit from the overhead power line.
Yeah, and there's also the option for palms, palmettos, if that helps clear the power lines easier too.
I don't think we had a problem with this, but, again, I think you either need to make a condition or just bring it back with,
Right, and I'd really like to know what pavement's gonna be removed and just put back into grass on this, because there's an awful lot of pavement out in front of that building and make it look a lot better if you do what you're saying, and that is take that existing pavement out other than what you're doing parking.
We'll take it out between the parking lot and Rebo Road. If you'll notice, there's a sign there now, an existing sign base. That area, we could take all that pavement out. Can you see does this have the no build zone on? I don't think that line's on that page. You see it?
No, but you had a document. I'm not sure it got in. It's in one of these other ones. It's hard to read them.
Site plan, first couple.
Yeah, it's probably way up here. Yeah, it's not it. Existing sign, no, it's not on there.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, can you see the slide with a?
Sheet is this? What's the sheet number? It's not showing on the
real thing?
On sheet 100,
L12,
Oh.
where are we at?
AO2. It's all right. It's hard to do this when you're not.
And there is a line, that's almost on the south edge of the parking area that extends out to Rebo Road. That's the no build. That's the easement line. From that easement line north, we can remove the pavement that's outside the parking lot and plant trees in that area.
So what is, you can't build a building there, but obviously you can landscape there. There is an existing sign there. What is allowed in that no build zone, if anything?
Parking. Parking.
So I believe your intent is really to build buildings in front along Rebo Road, all the way down, relocate the driveway. I think it would just be helpful, put trees in front of the area that's restricted by a third party where you have to keep parking, so you could put some trees there. But I think if you came back with a plan that showed future lot A, future lot B, whatever, relocating the road, and just give us a better idea of what the overall plan is, I think it'll be a lot easier to understand, please.
Do that.
Yeah, I agree. And if you could also, I mean, it's pretty easy too, if you could just plop down like a footprint of how a building might look.
Parking in the rear.
Yeah.
So maybe, if you consider a motion, you should list all of these conditions or recommendations in the motion if you're ready for that, or if you're not ready for a motion, and you want to table it,
There's one thing I forgot.
give them the recommendations, so.
I didn't open it up to public comments.
Yeah.
Just-
Anyway,
Yeah.
there is one person here, but I know there's no one online, so.
I am Farrelly, 2415 Oak Haven Street. I'm not concerned about it, but I'm confused by it. I thought I heard Kurt say that 75% of the frontage needed to be built out. But this has more of the boundaries of the property, but not the full boundaries of the property. It doesn't look like it's that much to me, because there's a lot of that whole southwest corner doesn't belong to him. So I'm not seeing how it conforms. I mean, I'm not concerned about it, but I'm not understanding it.
I think once,
Please put your name and address on the form.
I think once we see it divided up, we could better understand what lot, what the future ones are going to look like, the different
And
lots
I
would have
don't
their
know
different
why
plans.
that is deeded as such. I'm curious, wondering if that has anything to do with the fire trucks coming out and having visibility, in which case trees might problem.
But I believe that was put on in the 1970s or 60s.
We
Or
did-
the fire station.
We did check the reference, the bowling alley is old, so I think maybe the background here on this project for Ms. Fairley. Had the applicant stayed with the use that was there, the bowling alley, laser tag, something of that nature, and wasn't changing that use, they could have continued that use in perpetuity, right? And you wouldn't have been before you. The fact that they triggered a new use, it triggers the full review. That's basically the best way I can explain it. With the self-storage, and now it triggers all of these code requirements, from parking to fenestration to the liner building to landscaping. And, that's what they've been trying to fulfill. And I think you can see the complexity of that. So it's a lot to add that self-storage building. So, and hopefully that makes some sense. Really the only thing that they're not meeting per code is the parking not being behind a building, the 75%.
So I think I'm hearing that what we'd like to see, I mean, should we do like a preliminary approval subject to a more detailed site plan, or should we just ask for, can we do that?
I think if you want to do the preliminary approval, you could do so, but you need to put the recommendations of things you either want or conditions you want at final. You could do that, or
Or do we
You
want?
could table it with recommendations. It's for the next meeting. It's up, either one, I think, serves the same purpose. Preliminary is not a vested approval, so it's up to you.
So
There's
from what
no-
I've
yeah.
heard from the board or from the commission, so the things that we want are to see a little more detail on the landscape. We like to see the plan reflect clearly reflect the boundaries of the site. We like to know the general location of future buildings on the site. We'd like to see what surfaces we're looking at, if it's going to be pavement, grass, whatever it is. Is there other things that I don't have on this list? Okay.
Yeah, mention placing trees against, Rebo on the eastern side of that overflow parking area.
Which was shown on one of these slides, but maybe we can get all that stuff on one slide. It might be handy.
I don't think I saw it.
Okay. And then if we're going to use color, we would like that city staff to make sure that they actually copy them in color to help us look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's bureaucracy for you. Right? I mean, we were just trying to save a penny. That's what I'm saying. I'm just kidding. We'll do that. There was also a talk about the drive. I don't know what the specific issue was about that, but was it separating out the drive aisle or?
The drive area.
Or
Final
the
decision
future,
on where the drive is gonna go.
The future
He's
drive.
moved it around a couple times. I'd say we just table it and let him come back with that. I think he understands that we're in favor of approving it. It's just a question of getting this final information that the board can look at and feel comfortable that we're all on the same page. I think that's the biggest issue.
So do we need to put recommendations in the motion or not?
I think just restating them so we can give it, so we, both staff and the applicant has them to, talk.
Because I think what we're saying is we won't do a motion, we'll just continue it.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, you can table it.
But I think you very clearly spelled out the 4 or 5 things that we needed to see.
Yeah, so just to reiterate the things, we want a clear landscape plan, particularly with respect to the Rebo Road area. We want the actual boundaries of the site to be clearly reflected. We want the general location of the future buildings to be indicated. We want the surfaces within the site to be clarified, whether it's going to be pavement, grass, whatever. And we would like it to clearly indicate where the drive is planned to be.
Yeah, the only modification I'd have to that is I don't think he's gonna know what buildings are gonna go there. I think we just need to delineate the out parcels.
That's correct.
That's fine. I think didn't Mr. Morel
Yeah,
was
I did.
asking for,
Just to, see what's feasible, basically, but it don't have to be what it's actually going to be, right?
I have engineered with a possible footprint.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we get that footprint.
Yeah.
and then, gotta be
That's
there
fine.
tomorrow.
Just to make us happy.
okay, so is that clear to the applicant what we're looking for?
Understand.
Yeah, okay. Do we need do we not need a
Don't need a
motion
motion.
or?
Do we need a motion? Yeah.
Table it based on.
You do need a motion to table. You motion to table it, that's all the only motion you need.
I make a motion to table this, with the comments that have already been made to the applicant.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yeah. I don't think there was any opposed. Okay, well, let's take a 5-minute break. So next on the agenda is the subcommittees. I can't find my thing.
Okay, yeah, Benji has a printout too. I think we're kind of on the same wavelength a little bit. You know, the thought is that a whole commission, even a work session going over these things is going to take a lot of time to get through because there's a few hundred pages. And I think as you're seeing cases, you're seeing all the additional things that need to be potentially addressed because, you know, it's like the last case with the annexation, you know, do you require, you know, a lot of places just require a traffic study or letter with every commercial or industrial project. That would be the easiest way to address that, right? Just take a sentence. You know, I think from an efficiency standpoint, it would probably make sense when I'm, and then you can add on to all of this, is that maybe we have 2 or 3 people can just work through the nuts and the bolts. You already have proposed language, but, you know, maybe to go through that, tighten it up. And, you know, as representatives of the planning commission, I thought an attorney and an architect would probably be a good team, if you will. And that would be, I think, a lot quicker and more efficient. And then, you know, when it goes to a hearing or a work session, I think you have their product and that more refined product or in front of you. So it's maybe a little easier to approve something or move forward. That's just the idea. And I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so after seeing Kurt's letter, I just kind of want to expand on his idea. And just to kind of try to make it go faster than having one committee is having multiple committees. And you guys have copies of this called the review process sheet. So this is kind of just my idea that I want to throw out there and get you guys' thoughts, or if something that you want to do, or, you know, we can change things a little bit here and, you know, however you guys think we should go about things. So let me just talk through it real quick, and then and then you guys can jump in with any comments or questions. So looking at this review process sheet, so this proposed review process basically comes down to 3 steps. And so step 1 is basically introduction meeting, a regular PC meeting, which we've been doing. So Kurt will kind of give a general focus of the topic. So for example, the focus would be land development, chapter 7, development review procedures, chapter 9. And then the different topics within those focus, which is, you know, adding public utility, increasing open space, whatnot. And then after that, we'll take or do your regular thing, take public comments. And then if we have any general discussions, basically without getting too much into details of all these topics. And then after kind of just talking through that real quick, then we'll decide on which topics each of us would want to jump on and handle and either volunteer, or if, you know, you're pretty open to whatever, we could pick you a subcommittee. So I guess for example, let me pass this down here. That down. So just an example. So the first form, I'm actually going to flip. Well, I'm not going to here. I'm just going to, sorry, I'm trying to get my train of thoughts here. So we'll divide into, you know, different subcommittees, 2 to 3 members each. And then we'll fill out the topics and subcommittees form, which is that first form on the second page, and also that first page on that example group of papers that I just passed down. And then once we decide who's gonna take down who, I also made this comments form just to kind of generalize, which is the the 3rd page here. So the comments form is basically something that we could hand out to public or even between all of us. for us to fill out to give to the committee. So you could, basically to give your comments to a particular topic that you are not assigned to. So after that meeting is basically, where your committee would come together, the subcommittee meetings, which is not part of the planning commission meeting. So that's when you would get all the comments formed from the public, from, the other planning commission members. And I just threw out within 7 days of the introductory meeting that you would get all these forms. So you guys could start, doing your subcommittee meetings or whatnot. So each subcommittee would schedule its own individual meetings with Kurt. And you, of course, feel free to invite other individuals, maybe public that made comments that you want clarifications on, or any other party to help guide the proposed changes. I guess, for example, would be like utilities, Dominion, SE&G, whatever. And so basically after that, your whole goal is to put together a draft, a more complete draft than from what we started with. Kind of like the Holman draft is a good example of changes in the sections of your topic. And you would complete that report form, which is the last page, that has the topic, the sections, everybody that, the planning commission members that had written comments, the public that had written comments, summary of your recommended action to the planning commission, and a list of other minor changes that maybe wasn't initially part of the original topic, but it was small enough that you could slide it, into that general section of where the topic is. But I think anything major topics that kind of, there's kind of strays and might need additional review, you'd list that on the report form as well. And then we could, come back and put together another committee that would review that other major change. So after you put together that report form, whenever you're ready, I don't know, each topic might take a couple of months, a month, or even more, depending on how complex it is. But then that would bring us to step 3, which is the decision meetings at our regular planning commission meeting. So each subcommittee would either give an update on the progress of that subcommittee. If discussions are still in progress or the draft is not done, you just give your update, and then we'd take public comments, and we'd do a quick planning commission discussion if you're looking for more comments or thoughts from the public or the planning commission. Or you present your final report form and your final draft of the section, and then that's when either the planning commission would decide to approve that draft and report form, or deny, or table if the planning commission feels that there still needs to make additional changes based on the additional comments and discussions. So that's basically the gist of it. So the examples that are passed down kind of has like a little sample of, what they might look like. So, and I'm hoping this would kind of streamline it better and make it easier and faster for everyone.
So 2 points. Would these subcommittee meetings be subject to the public notice requirements? Or do we know?
That's why they would be recommended as 2 or 3.
Because then it's not a meeting that you have to
It's not a
form a
meeting.
notice about.
However, no action or no functional, actual public.
But yeah, if
action
you don't have the whole,
taken
if you don't
into-
have the whole commission, you
They
can't.
come
vote on it.
back here, so they're just working on things, so.
So would the public be invited to those subcommittee meetings?
I think what Benji's proposing is, if the subcommittee wants to reach out to,
Yeah.
citizens, they could, but I mean, whether you take his for whatever you, I think it's up to the subcommittee, sure. They could invite.
And I guess my second point is that I found our last work session to be a little frustrating because I thought we were going to focus on the things, the specific things that you wanted to change and update in the code. And it seemed to turn into a line by line, just wide ranging kind of unfocused discussion on, everybody's favorite topic in the code. And at that rate, we'll all be in the old folks home before we get through the code. I found the last work session to be very frustrating in that regard because I thought we were going to go right to the red line sections and we were going to talk about what you wanted to change, because I think the changes that you want to make are very good, and we never talked about that. I think we should have talked about that first and tabled, because that's what's really important, I think, the change in the code.
Well, I think that's why that's why I made the recommendation is, anytime you get a larger number of people making a decision together to try to work on detailed things, it's usually not as efficient.
Well,
Yeah,
I think our mission is in a state of confusion as well. And I think individual members have different views of what our mission is with this project. There's the, kind of literal view. We are presented with some proposed code changes that, my understanding, most of them came from you, Kurt. I may be wrong on that. There may be some that came from some other source that we're supposed to look at and make recommendations on. That's one part. And then there's the other part, and I think a part that's a lot more dear to some of our hearts is the part that we were struggling with just today, that there's some problems with the code that are not addressed in your proposed recommendations that we are struggling with as we try to do the commission's work. So we're trying to do more than one thing at once, and we're a little bit unorganized about it, maybe of necessity, because the definition of multitasking is less attention to the task deemed less important. So I don't know if a subcommittee really is going to solve that problem, which in my opinion is the essence of the problem. I also think that what we need is maybe a schedule. But I think both parts of what we're trying to do here are really important. But if you want us to just do the literal work of let's pass on Kurt's recommendations and then save the other parts that many of us feel are really important, about, changing roles and, things like that for a later date, we can do that, but we don't have any guidance on that. And to me, the place the guidance ought to come from is City Council, because they're supposedly the ones that have tasked, as I understand it, they have tasked us to do this. And we're just not really sure what we're doing, I think. I don't know if anybody agrees with me.
I don't agree with you completely, because I think if you want to know what we as a planning commission are supposed to do, you can go to the city website and it's got a listing of very specific things that we're supposed to do. So I personally don't have a problem with that. It's just the way we go about doing it. I mean, we can't, again, going back to that last work session, I thought we were going to go to the red line section of the code and start talking about that, but we stopped along the way and we started talking. I remember the one topic that I thought was interesting was traffic impact studies. And we got into a long drawn out discussion about traffic impact studies. And we kind of figured out, well, we don't really have any control over this. That I would have rather seen that highlighted as a need in parking lot, put that in a parking lot as something that needs to be addressed. Because 5 minutes of discussion would tell you that it's nothing that we can solve as a planning commission. The answer to that lies with other people. So it didn't make sense to spend as long as we did talking about it, because we couldn't fix it, and we certainly couldn't fix it during the work session. So I think we would have been better off as highlighting it for something to go back and dig into a little bit more. And but we just, it's almost like we need a discussion leader to kind of keep people on track and on task so that we don't go off on, the legal term is a frolic and detour.
I think it's weird that the city council started this process. They started this process over a year ago. Council took it upon itself in all of these work sessions to begin to review code edits. And then they were going to send that to us to muddle through, right? Well, they shouldn't have done that in my view. I think what they should have done was give it to, let staff make their recommendations. I like your idea. I'd love to sit down and just go through a red line that Kurt produces and let's just go through it. I mean, I thought we did really well with the Hallman draft on that one occasion where we got through that section of the code. I think Kurt's suggestion in general that 2 or 3 people take a look at it and perhaps then produce a red line in conjunction with Kurt himself, it's probably not a bad idea if people want to volunteer to do that or be assigned to do that. That's probably a good idea. And then let it come back with a red line that for our full committee to review. And then we just need to discipline ourselves and focus on the red line.
Can I provide just a quick, I'll be curt with my context. I'll try, maybe try not to be rude. But to answer the original, as Paul referenced, and I think Diane attended all those meetings and so did Paul. So for almost a year, everything you've seen before you was taken to the city council's work session. And the things that were taken to you in red, some of them came from me, but a lot of them came from, when I started, I was given a large spreadsheet of many pages that had from a number of different councilmen, from planning commissioners, from architects, from like Benji, I think had a few of them, from community members. And those were what were considered. There's a lot of things I would, like traffic impact studies. I think tonight you see, hey, maybe you should think about that were not added because those were all things that city council kind of vetted and then have sent to you. And I think, I think you're right. I think you're all seeing as you're doing this, there's a lot more probably that needs to be thought about. And I think that's the challenge, is that going to be accepted politically or not? We had stuck to the historic preservation. I know that we're getting into a few hundred pages of this. I think you're seeing, with experience, you want to add something. So, I think it's a good discussion. I think that Ms. McFan has is, how do you want to handle that? What's before you tonight is just a quicker way to do it. Obviously a work session with all of you and this meeting after a number of tiring and complicated cases. You're not going to want to be here until 12 talking about code. That's not going to work. So we have to be a little more, but that's a fundamental question I think you have to answer is, do you want to go further and make some further recommendations or not? Because the whole code, it started as not a whole code rewrite. It started as a selected rewrite. I think everybody's realizing the enormity of what the issues, and that's, I think, I don't know I can answer any more than that. By saying too much more than that. Not at all.
I mean, some of these are pretty important too, right? That we need to address, like, the development requirements. We don't have that since it's a new thing. We don't have a list of what the developers have to, present in front of us.
As you can see, that's problematic with each case, right? Because
so we can't just tell it to go away. Like we
I
have
don't know what else to say. It's unique. I'd have to say, I think Paul has been dealing with this, I think, for the last 6 or 7 years, but Bill, I've never worked anywhere where a developer didn't have a list that was in the code that they had to provide. But we are literally in that system right now. So I shouldn't say that, but I mean, that's where we're at, and every single case, well, I don't have to provide that. But it's not, where is it in the code? Well, it's not in the code.
No, I think we all get frustrated with the length of the meetings and how much we kind of churn through different things. I think we're getting a very good product at the end of the day, but it is frustrating. And I think that as I learned when I was doing this comprehensive plan with all these different entities, I think in large part, we just need a good referee to say, let's move on, or let's let's put that off of the table for now. We'll park it
Mhm.
and we'll come back to it when we can, realistically address it or assign somebody to do some research on that. I think the way what we're doing is, it- it's unbelievably important. I think we started with one of the hardest things. I think there's a couple other hard ones in here. But the historical stuff is probably one of the most controversial out there. And we got an awful lot of public comment. And when I did the comprehensive plan, that was a big subject. But there were a lot of others too, when we started getting into culture. But I don't necessarily have a problem with what we're doing. I have a problem with the time it's taking. And I think that if we establish a referee that kind of goes ahead of us, probably the one that does a lot of the red lines, I don't know, but kind of goes ahead of us and starts to referee stuff. And as soon as we get stuck or trapped, doesn't make any difference what position we have. That's inconsequential. It's just say, okay, let's park that. And since, since Mike, you're so intense on that as an issue, you research that and come back to this committee and tell us what the research has found. And maybe we can get through it that way. I don't say that Benji's idea is not good also, but I think we're compartmentalizing it. And I think once we start to compartmentalize, when we get it back to the full board, we're going to be doing the same thing. I think there'll be a little pre-work done to stuff so that we get the ideas of those 2 or 3 individuals that are specifically addressing that. But when we put it back to the board, I think we're going to have a very similar situation. It may be a little bit
I
better.
think we should look at setting time. First of all, have a referee. 2, a time limit on the meeting. And number 3, what sections are we gonna cover that?
Yeah,
that
a
particular-
schedule.
A schedule.
Yes,
Section 2,
absolutely.
3, 4.
You're right.
I don't know.
So we have, this is the 4th code edit I think I've done. This is definitely, the structure of it has been the most interesting of all those code edits. We already have it's all there, it's all in red, right? There's already been a schedule, and we actually went out of schedule because some things were felt to be more important. So all of that is essentially done.
Well,
'Cause it went through the city council.
I don't know
So-
I don't know that we necessarily felt that other things were more important. I think we just needed somebody to say, all right, let's go to the red line section first and do that.
Sure.
If we had done that in the last work session, it would have been much more productive.
Well, there was actually a schedule with the city council, and I think they directed, because they felt like these land development things where you're setting all this stuff in the tree and the landscape should come before like the design, because we started with the design and the zoning. Paul and Diane can tell you, and they felt that those last 2 things, that was the schedule. It was like going in chapter order, like it started with the boards and commissions. Then it went to the first few chapters, which were zoning and design. And then it went to landscaping, because that's the next chapter, right? And then an open space. And then it went to the land design requirements that you're dealing with now. That's the last chapter, just because that's how the development code was organized, except for the boards and commissions. And they felt like, hey, these land development things are pretty important, because based on some of the cases you were already seeing with the Marshview Estates, like, well, how we approve this when we don't have standards to approve it based on. So we went out of that schedule. So there's already an order. I think,
Are you saying that the code has already been redlined?
yeah, the whole thing's been redlined.
Alright.
That it well went through the year-long
So the
council
code has
process.
gone through, and so.
Yeah, you can pull it all up. It's all online right now.
No, but I mean, they were still having code edit meetings when we started this.
Yeah, those
They
ended in,
concluded their code edit meeting.
those concluded, yes, in June. Yeah.
All right, so we have the code has been edited by the city council, and it's up to us to review it. So then we have to decide How many pages do we want to do at each meeting?
And it was edited based on section, so that,
I would do a schedule, section, we may get into sections that we just get rid of
They
in
can be
30
quick,
minutes.
yeah.
But somebody has to make that call.
Yeah.
So
well, they already exist. We went with this section first because that's how I was directed, I think, to do.
So I move that
So move.
Mike set a schedule and that Mr. Hallman be the referee at the meeting. I think they're perfectly suited for these jobs. I defer to them both on all of those things. I think that they would be really good at it. And of course, they can consult with staff.
I think just from my perspective, if maybe there should be 2 meetings for each one of these sections. The first meeting is to present it and for you all to think about it. And I think that's the opportunity at that meeting for you to
Ask questions?
ask questions and also if you want to add things and, you know, just like the last thing. So you kind of, it's kind of like the preliminary and final, or you tabled it, right? So maybe the first one should be, here's all the red line. Are there changes that you'd like? And then the next meeting should be, you should give me all those changes and anything additional that you know, raised, should be talked about in that meeting, that final meeting. And, you know, if we can't figure it out at that final meeting, then we just have to table it to the next meeting. I think that should probably be that's probably the best case scenario. That works for everybody.
That works for me.
I think you need to have two times to go over the same section.
I think what you said, yeah, I think it makes sense.
I think I think we have to go through the red line and then you need to collectively have an idea at that first meeting. Are there any additional things like traffic impact studies? Are there any additional things we need to look at in that following month? And we need to prepare things, or you would like to prepare things? I think that makes some sense.
So are you talking about regular meetings?
I'm talking about regular meetings. If you want to do them as subcommittee meetings, I mean, I'm at your,
Okay, so depending on, what is there still like 200 pages to go through? How much is left?
it's the whole code, but it's not, it was selected pieces of each code. So just as you,
So let's say, I mean, how many meetings are we talking about? We meet once a month. So if we're gonna handle trees in September and October, you know, I mean, I like the idea of breaking it down to a reasonable amount, which is why I think we need a schedule, and somebody needs to look at it and just
I can
say,
provide you with the schedule if you'd like for the next meeting, or I can provide that to you this week and send it over to you based on what the city council did. I have a schedule.
well, because they want us to do things in certain order. They have these things
It was
in
just, I think, identified by both the city council and by you that the land development stuff seemed to be the most important thing, seemed to be the priority to give you the standards that you need to make decisions. And then the tree thing seems to be this, they felt that was also important because it's the citizens, right, are concerned, right, about the clear cutting more than.
Well, we still haven't finished land development, but I guess where I think what everybody's saying sounds good, but what I would like to do is see us go through the schedule and go through that first meeting. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, if there's sections that we need additional information, let somebody go do the research, come back to the next meeting and present what the research is that they found, and we can discuss it at the second meeting, but we don't necessarily have to have 2 meetings for every one of the topics, because I think there's going to be topics that we can get through and agree on without having a second meeting necessarily.
Is this like, is a schedule, like a schedule that we have to decide by a certain date or by a certain amount of meetings?
No, I think it's just a schedule of.
Just a schedule of what topic
Yeah.
comes next?
Yeah.
Okay,
what we're gonna
okay.
discuss on this.
Yeah.
These
Gotcha.
are the code section. And it has to be like to have addressed the whole historic review board in one meeting that's not realistic.
Right.
It needs to be broken down into manageable sections. Some of them, so there might be some that we can handle 3 or 4 in one session. But these, I agree that we probably did the hardest one first. And since it's not directly our own work, that was also an addition, I mean, we were setting things up for another board as opposed to setting things up for our own particular work. So that was, made it even kind of more complicated in a way. And we needed to get a lot of input from people that were actually on that board and staff and everybody else in order to do that. There's other stuff I think is going to be simple, but I mean, do you feel that
I don't know about
you can
simple.
make a schedule?
Well, the schedule's
that
already
was
made.
done
The city council had this, we had a schedule that we went over each meeting, and I think it just, I don't think they were as concerned about the granular, like, word by word details, because they assumed that was gonna come back to them, right? I think and you are, and I think that's why this is, gotten a little, but so again, it sounds like everybody's, right now, I have a schedule. I can send that to you this week. It sounds like everybody liked this 2-meeting idea. And so right now we're in the land development, which is chapter 7 and some chapter 9. So it's tied to that.
So
Next meeting,
just to be clear about your 2-meeting concept. So let's say we're gonna introduce trees at the September meeting. Then we're gonna act on trees in the October meeting. Is that how it's gonna work? Or are we going to also introduce a new topic at that next meeting? I mean, it's gonna take a while.
I don't personally, I'm just not speaking for you. I think to add another topic is just too much on the same, and without a work session, so.
Yeah, public comment, yeah.
Complement each other and what I'm seeing is just an agenda. That meeting and present for the work session. When it's done in the work session, then it's ready to come.
That's fair.
That's fair too.
So maybe the introduction should be work session.
I agree. I was actually thinking that the introduction should be at a work session.
Would you like to do the work session before the meeting? Would you like to
Yes,
meet at like
yes.
3 o'clock on
You mean
Monday?
on the same
We-
day,
we-
or do you want to?
We could vote and then have the work session. Is that what you're saying?
No, you'd have the work session. No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant that you would,
Being facetious.
because the complication is that you have 7 people that all have different schedules, and it's hard to every single month to create a.
I'm retired. I can.
But
I thought I was
this
retired.
scheduling suggestion, do we want the work session to
was
be the
retired.
same day as the meeting we're going to take it up at? Or do we want the work session
Regular day.
to precede by a week or so? So if we need
I
to
would-
get other info or something like that.
I would like the work session to proceed by a week or 2
Yes.
for that
I
very
agree.
reason.
Could I suggest maybe 2 weeks? Because.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I need a little, I think I might need a little time, right? Because if you give me a little time, then I can maybe produce something in that. But if you give me a week, I can't. It's impossible. Because it's literally, I'm sending you the packet that day.
If you could give me the schedule that you have, I'd be happy to kind of go through it and do an analysis based on what I think maybe the board might be able to deal with.
I mean, I can send it.
Yeah,
to you all.
I would, please send the schedule to
So-
all of us.
So it sounds like there's a desire to do this 2 meetings. So you're gonna have it presented to a work session in which and I have no problem being a jerk and telling you no. It's, at that meeting, you're going to both discuss things that you think should be added and the redlined items.
Mm-hmm.
And the presentation at that work session. If it does not conclude, we'll send it to the next work session. If we do have some, clarity, we will send it to the next regular meeting. And that's how we'll do this. So we'll plan it. And you're going to set a regular day. Is that what I'm hearing? So
Sure.
come up with a day. So we're going to have a regular day. So for the. work
I'd take you out of the referee position,
I don't
just because
Fine.
I think
I think Mr.
you're
Holman
being
is
a referee
perfect
would
for-
just, would be great, actually.
It's against my fundamental nature, but I don't mind volunteering.
Well, I think, well, since you're gonna, since the tabled items are the ones that you're gonna wind up researching, I think you're the perfect referee to do that.
Sure you do, sure you do. Perfect.
Well, why don't we try it out with you as the referee?
Okay.
And if we decide that that's not working very good, either somebody else can volunteer or we'll let Kurt do it, or, hire some sort of, heavy to come in and whatever we need to do.
So when would we have a work session?
That would be the first Monday. If you did it 2 weeks, it would be the first Monday of every month. If you wanted to keep it on Monday,
Monday is a good day for me.
which would be Labor Day next time. So that's not going to work. So, but, it could be the first Monday, or in just next month, it's the 9th, because it's Labor Day. No one's going to be here.
Just for those of us who are still working full-time jobs. Mondays are a little hard. They're a little challenging.
By Tuesday.
Tuesday's good. Yeah, Tuesday afternoons would be good, I think. Get the crises of Monday taken care of.
It would have to be after 3 because I have our department head meeting at 2.
What day were we looking at, or
For
what
Tuesday.
week?
First,
The 3rd?
first Tuesday of each
I
month.
think we were trying to set a regular day until we get through this process.
Yeah,
for a
First
regular
Tuesday of
time.
each month at 3:00.
3:00.
Okay, because I gotta go.
Oh, yeah. So it goes straight to green after this.
Need one, right?
Yeah. Maybe we should have our meeting there.
No air conditioning.
That would make for a very quick meeting.
Yeah.
So does that work in September?
Is everybody okay with that?
Go back to work. Yes, that's the
If you said it and we can't be here, we can't be here.
Might have to be up here, to be honest with you. That's the only problem, because I know there's a 3:00 meeting downstairs.
What?
Up here is fine.
Room down at the bottom of the stairs it looks kind of empty.
It used to be a museum. It's now just empty space.
Because I saw
Some
there
of
was
my
like
staff's in the back.
there was a table, I mean, we could be in there. I like the table format,
depressing.
honestly, for a work session.
So,
I think that.
Well, there's
There's an
executive
executive,
room.
Well,
there's
yeah,
another room over there that's
That'd
smaller.
be good.
We could all meet in there.
Yeah.
Try to reserve it.
And it's got a TV, so you put stuff on there if you need to.
Okay, so first
It's gonna be
Tuesday.
2 hours,
3:00.
Tuesday, 3:00. Or do you think we need 3 hours? If so, then we have to pick a different day, just because I can't make the Tuesday.
I think we should try to do 2 hours.
2 hours.
So 3 to 5, that's what we're doing.
You're not getting paid for this, I'm just warning.
And as work sessions, the public is welcome, right?
Public's not welcome, it has to be noticed.
Yeah, and so that they'll know exactly what because I think that, like, I remember when we first started this and there was a bunch of people here who wanted to talk about stuff that was so far beyond where we were ready to talk about anything. I think a schedule would be helpful for public comment as well.
Let me ask you, do we have to have public comment at a work session where we're just trying to go through a document, and then can the public comment then be limited to the regular session when it comes back?
Not unless you invite it.
It's up to the chairman.
In other words,
Well,
we don't have to entertain public comment at a work session if we don't want to, but they can certainly be there,
They can be there.
listen to the deliberations.
maybe we could ask for,
That'll slow
for
us down.
written public comment to be provided in advance of the work session. So like a lot of these things that you notice about the language and stuff like that, really, that is helpful to have in advance as opposed to talking. We don't need to talk about those things because you're always right. I mean, but there are other things that people might want to address that would be helpful to have in writing, because that is one of the ways I have observed us going far afield. Because, we end up talking about the history of stuff. Not that it's not interesting and not that we don't all want to hear that, but it does get us off topic sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the schedule, which we need the schedule. Everybody needs the schedule.
yeah, I mean, and if you all agree to not take verbal public comments during the work session, I won't. So,
I mean, I think it's a good idea not to if we're gonna try to work through it. I mean, the public certainly can hear and they can make comment at the regular session when it comes back up. What this is for.
I agree. I think.
Trying to work through a red line, right? And that-
Yeah, and you don't have to you don't have to take these sections. I mean, this can be cumulative, right? It can be a cumulative thing, right? You don't necessarily have to take each section and then send it to the city council and have it all wrapped up. So you could wait, or you could just decide those very important sections, we now want to make a final document. So I'm just saying, right, there could be that extra time to marinate, to let some extra comments come in. Some thoughts. And that's the typical way of doing things. So, I mean,
I think that on the historic discussion, it was really useful to have Lisa, but I don't know that there's that kind of expertise out there on any of these other sections that we have to have the public talking before a regular meeting, so.
But certainly they could share anything that they want with us
That's right.
ahead of time,
Sure.
that's right.
just
Okay, so it sounds like you're all, I think you just need to make a motion to agree on the day and time of the work session, and we'll just regularly schedule it and move forward.
all right,
If you
is there a
need.
motion?
Okay. I move that we handle our code revision work going forward as follows. A schedule will be established. Freeze will share his draft schedule with Mr. Tomey, and they will put a schedule together and advise us what it is. That schedule will divide the code sections up for consideration pursuant to the schedule. And each section will be first handled at a work session. Those work sessions will be regular and take place at 3 p.m. on the first Tuesday of each month until we're done with our code revisions. And they will last for 2 hours. At those work sessions, no verbal public comment will be entertained, but the public is welcome to submit written comments in advance prior to the work session. Otherwise, they need to reserve it till the regular session. Once a section is through the work session, it will be brought up at a regular meeting. Again, regular public comment and so forth will be applied, but the intent of bringing it up at the regular meeting will be for the commission to act on the revision. Does that cover it? Oh, Mr. Hallman will function as the appointed referee of the code of the
Work
work
session.
session.
We'll purchase him a little outfit.
And Benji will lend his gavel to.
All right,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, yes, so we'll skip the old business and move that to the work session as,
Yeah, we'll just move that to the work session and I think you're.
And on your schedule, could you reflect, to the extent we finished any sections, can you just put completed? And,
Sure.
and if it has or has not been provided to council, if we could indicate that.
I'll bring, we'll have to bring a calendar or something to every meeting, and so you feel like you made some progress.
So we're clear, the regular meeting will continue to be the third Monday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, all right, we'll see you all the.
motion for adjournment,
I move to adjourn.
for a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.